You've been told that happiness comes from more money, more success, more approval. They told you once you have it all, you'll finally feel complete. But if that were true, why do so many people who seem to have it all still feel empty? Why do you still feel restless, anxious, and stuck in the endless cycle of wanting more, always searching for something that seems just out of reach? The truth is, happiness isn't something you chase. It's something you already have, buried deep within you. Buddhist wisdom has been teaching this for centuries, that you don't need to search for wholeness because it's already inside of you. You've been living with it, but you've forgotten. It's not about getting more. It's about realizing you are already complete, just as you are. Tonight, as you listen to this wisdom, something will change. Your mind will slow down. The weight on your shoulders will begin to lift. You'll feel the stillness inside you, like the calm after a storm. And when you wake up tomorrow, you'll see the world in a new light, clearer, more peaceful, more whole. This isn't just another audio to fall asleep to. This is a reminder that nothing is missing in your life. You are already whole. Are you ready to remember? Let's begin. As you settle deeper into the stillness of your mind, let's explore an idea that has the power to change how you see yourself and the world around you. It's an idea that touches the very core of who you are, reminding you that imperfection is not a flaw, but a reflection of the natural beauty of life. You've been taught that wholeness means being perfect, complete, flawless. But what if I told you that true beauty and completeness lie in the cracks, in the unfinished, and in the things you think are missing? This isn't a theory. It's an ancient truth rooted deeply in Buddhist philosophy and aesthetics, a truth that can free you from the constant struggle for more. At the heart of this wisdom lies the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi. This philosophy teaches us to embrace the beauty in imperfection, to find completeness in what seems incomplete. In a world obsessed with perfection, the perfect home, the perfect body, the perfect life, this may sound strange, but the more you explore this idea, the more you'll realize that it's the cracks, the unfinished edges, the worn-out surfaces that make everything truly beautiful. And these imperfections, they are not something to fix or hide. They are the essence of life itself, the proof that life is real, dynamic, and constantly evolving. The concept of wabi-sabi isn't just about appreciating objects. It's about seeing the world differently, about shifting your perspective and understanding that true wholeness comes not from filling the gaps, but from recognizing that the gaps themselves are part of the whole. It's the kind of insight that, when embraced, can change how you feel about yourself, your life, and your place in the world. Buddhism teaches us to accept impermanence, the fact that nothing stays the same forever. This includes not only the world around us, but also our bodies, our minds, and our experiences. Nothing is fixed, and that's where the beauty lies. The vase with a crack, the tree with a twisted trunk, the worn-out road that's been traveled 1,000 times. These things aren't less valuable because of their flaws. In fact, they are often far more beautiful because of them. Imperfection holds wisdom that perfection could never offer. In your life, you might feel the urge to always look for what's missing. You might believe that once you fix yourself, your life, or your circumstances, you'll finally feel complete. But what if completeness isn't something to be found through effort, achievement, or success? What if it's already there, in your imperfections, in your history, in your struggles? Just like the cracks in the pottery, your challenges and your flaws are part of what makes you whole. When you begin to look at life through the lens of wabi-sabi, you'll start to see that everything around you, everything about you, carries beauty in its imperfections. This philosophy teaches us to appreciate things as they are, not as we wish them to be. Everything you need to be whole is already inside you, even in the moments you feel incomplete or broken. In the world of wabi-sabi, nothing is ever truly broken. Instead, it's just waiting to reveal its true beauty. This view challenges everything society teaches us about perfection, success, and what it means to be enough. And by embracing this perspective, you'll find peace in the present moment as you learn to accept yourself completely, imperfections and all. Buddhism doesn't just stop at admiring imperfections in objects or people. It teaches us that our very nature is imperfect, and that's what makes us perfect. In many ways, these imperfections are signs of life. Think about the aging process, for example. As our bodies grow older, we develop wrinkles, scars, and changes that often make us feel insecure. But in Buddhism, aging is seen not as something to resist, but as a natural and beautiful process. Our wrinkles and scars tell the story of our lives, of the experiences we've lived through, of the lessons we've learned. They remind us that we are constantly evolving, just like the world around us. The idea of imperfection is not something we need to hide or feel ashamed of. Instead, it's a symbol of growth. In fact, the acceptance of imperfection is central to many Buddhist practices. The acceptance of the present moment, with all its flaws and difficulties, is a key component of mindfulness. Rather than wishing for things to be different or constantly striving for more, Buddhism encourages us to embrace the present as it is. We don't need to chase perfection because, in reality, there is no such thing. There is only the present, only this moment, only this life in its natural state, a beautiful, ever-changing process of becoming. The idea of embracing imperfection can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to trying to control everything around you. It's natural to want to fix things, to make them better or perfect. But Buddhism teaches that this desire is rooted in a misunderstanding of what it means to be whole. In truth, wholeness is not the absence of flaws, but the ability to see beauty within them. When you stop striving to fix everything and start accepting what is, you begin to experience the world in a way that brings peace. Take a moment to think about the objects or things in your life that seem imperfect. Maybe it's your favorite worn-out sweater, a chipped mug you've had for years, or even the creaky floorboards of your house. These things, though they may seem imperfect on the surface, carry a history. They've been with you through your experiences, your trials, your successes, and your failures. In Buddhism, this is what we call impermanence. Nothing is permanent, and that's what makes everything precious. The impermanence of things is a reminder to embrace life as it is, not as we wish it to be. By acknowledging the beauty of imperfection, we can cultivate a deeper sense of acceptance within ourselves. We start to see that we don't need to change who we are to feel complete. Rather than looking for happiness in external achievements or material possessions, we begin to understand that true fulfillment lies within. This realization is both freeing and liberating because it allows us to release the constant pressure to be perfect. Buddhism offers a radical shift in perspective, one that is especially needed in today's world, where so many of us are constantly told that we need to improve, evolve, or achieve more in order to feel worthy. But the truth is, you are worthy just as you are. The pursuit of perfection only adds stress and anxiety. It keeps you stuck in a cycle of not enough, always striving for something that can never truly satisfy. The beauty of imperfection shows us that there is nothing missing in your life, and that everything you need to feel whole is already within you. As you reflect on this wisdom, think about the ways in which your own life has been shaped by imperfection. Consider the moments where you felt like you were broken or incomplete, and how, looking back, those very moments were where you learned the most, where you grew the most, and where you discovered the beauty of your true self. You were never missing anything. You were just waiting to realize that the cracks, the struggles, and the imperfections were part of the journey to understanding who you truly are. In Buddhism, this journey of self-discovery is not about striving for perfection, but about realizing that you've always been complete. The path is not one of accumulation, but one of awareness. Awareness of the beauty, wisdom, and wholeness that is always present, even in what we perceive as flaws. The more we embrace imperfection, the more we find peace in the present moment. And as you continue on your path, remember that nothing is missing. You are whole, just as you are. In this moment, and in all moments, allow yourself to let go of the need to fix, improve, or change. Instead, embrace the beautiful imperfection of life. See the world as it truly is, full of cracks, brokenness, and yet complete. When you let go of the belief that something is missing, you unlock the ability to see the beauty in everything, just as it is. So, next time you feel like something is missing in your life, remember this: nothing is ever truly missing. You are whole. And this understanding, this acceptance, is the key to peace. Having just explored the beauty found in imperfection, it's clear that much of our sense of lack arises from a misguided perception of what truly completes us. We spend so much time thinking about what is missing from our lives, whether it's external achievements, possessions, or experiences, that we fail to see what is already in front of us. As we delve deeper into Buddhist wisdom, the truth becomes even more apparent. Everything we need is already here. It's not something to chase, grasp, or attain. It's simply a matter of returning our awareness to the present moment, where abundance already exists in its most authentic form. In Buddhism, there is a profound teaching called Pakupana, which can be roughly translated as the ever-sufficient present. It's a reminder that the present moment, as it is always enough. Lack dissolves when we stop searching for fulfillment outside of ourselves and simply return to the now. Our minds are often overwhelmed with thoughts of the future, the past, or what might be missing in our lives. But the truth is that in this very moment, we are surrounded by everything we need. When we get caught in the constant striving for more, we overlook the simple yet profound abundance that is already present. Our need for more often clouds our ability to experience the richness of the present moment. We believe that happiness and fulfillment are always just out of reach, leading us to constantly chase something that we think will make us complete. But the teaching of Pakupana shows us that the moment we stop searching for something more, we can fully appreciate what we already have. This constant chase for fulfillment creates an illusion of emptiness, as if there is always something missing, something we need to reach or achieve in order to be happy. But as we explore the concept of Pakupana, we come to understand that true contentment doesn't come from seeking external sources of happiness. It's about realizing that all the happiness, peace, and satisfaction we seek are available in this moment, in the space between our thoughts, in the simple experience of being present. When we begin to truly observe the present moment, we start to see that every little detail is a form of abundance. The sound of your breath, the feeling of your body against the chair, the hum of life around you, these are all expressions of the richness of the present. And in this moment, nothing is lacking. There is no need to wish for more or look for what's missing. Everything is here, sufficient and complete. It's only when we start searching for something beyond the now that we lose sight of what is truly abundant. The problem lies in the way our minds are conditioned. We are taught from a young age that we must attain something to feel satisfied, that happiness is something that can be achieved through goals, possessions, or status. This conditioning makes it difficult to appreciate the present moment because we are always focused on the future or what lies ahead. We are so preoccupied with what's next that we miss the beauty and abundance of what we already have. We think that once we reach a certain point in life, achieve a goal, or get what we desire, then we will be happy. But the truth is that happiness is available to us now, in this moment. The only thing standing in the way is our constant desire for something more. Pakupana teaches us that there is no need for accumulation or achievement to feel complete. This moment, in all its simplicity, holds the key to everything we need. It's in the small things, the warmth of sunlight, the comfort of a quiet space, the sensation of your feet on the ground, that true abundance is found. These simple moments are enough in themselves. There is nothing more to find, because it has always been here, waiting for us to notice. In Buddhist teachings, the present is not just an in-between space that leads us from one moment to the next. It is the only moment that truly exists. The past is a memory, the future is a projection, but the present is where life is happening, right here, right now. By cultivating an awareness of the present, we begin to see that everything we need to feel whole, fulfilled, and content is available to us in this very moment. The belief that something is missing is simply an illusion created by our minds, and when we drop this illusion, we open ourselves to the truth of abundance. This doesn't mean that we stop planning for the future or reflecting on the past. It means that we stop living in those times. We stop living as though happiness and fulfillment lie somewhere out there, beyond our reach. When we return to the present, we find that everything we need to be whole is already here. And it's not just about accepting what is happening right now, it's about seeing the richness, the depth, and the completeness of this moment. The practice of mindfulness, which is deeply embedded in Buddhist teachings, is all about training our minds to fully engage with the present. This doesn't mean forcing our minds to be still or trying to stop thoughts. It's about learning to observe without attachment. We become aware of the moment without the need to fix, change, or improve anything. This awareness of the present moment is what reveals abundance. When we stop chasing the future, we start to see the beauty of what is already here. This shift in perspective is transformative. As you cultivate mindfulness and learn to return to the present, you will begin to realize that the struggle for more money, more success, more recognition, is a distraction. These things are not the sources of true happiness. In fact, they often pull us away from what is truly meaningful. The abundance we are searching for isn't hidden somewhere in the future. It's here, in the simplicity of the present moment. And once we come to this realization, something profound happens. The need to fill our lives with more disappears. The need to prove ourselves, to chase after things, vanishes. Instead, we begin to experience the peace of being. We learn to appreciate the simplicity of life, and through this appreciation, we uncover an abundance that has always been there. We stop thinking of the present as something that needs to be fixed or improved, and start seeing it as something that is whole, complete, and enough. The concept of Pakapana isn't just about the present moment. It's about our relationship to time itself. When we are always focused on the future or the past, we lose touch with the now. But the present is where life truly unfolds. By returning to the present, we reconnect with what is real, and in doing so, we discover that everything we need is already within us. The endless pursuit of more, of something outside of ourselves, fades away, and we find that we are already abundant. As you reflect on this idea, notice how much of your energy goes towards seeking something in the future. Whether it's a new project, a new possession, or a new milestone, we often convince ourselves that these things will make us happy. But in truth, when we become present and fully aware of the moment, we realize that nothing is missing. Everything that truly matters is already here. The present moment, in all its simplicity, is enough, and when we cultivate awareness of it, we unlock a deeper sense of peace and contentment. We stop looking for fulfillment outside of ourselves and begin to experience the world exactly as it is, perfect, abundant, and complete. As you move forward in your life, remember that there is no need to constantly search for something more. The abundance you are seeking is already here in the present moment. When you return to this moment, you will realize that you have everything you need. The present moment is not something to wait for. It is the only moment you need. As we journey deeper into understanding the essence of our existence, we begin to see that the concept of emptiness is not something to fear or resist. In fact, it holds the key to liberation, peace, and true understanding. Just like we've explored the abundance of the present moment, where we realize that there is nothing missing, the next step in this realization is grasping the profound Buddhist concept of shunyata, emptiness. This isn't the emptiness of a void or nothingness. Instead, it is the emptiness that reveals the fullness of life itself. It's the paradox that nothing missing and nothing permanent are in fact expressions of the same truth, the truth of impermanence, interdependence, and the constant unfolding of life. The concept of emptiness in Buddhism is often misunderstood. At first glance, emptiness may seem like a lack of something, a void, an absence. But in reality, it's the absence of fixed, permanent, or unchanging nature. And when we begin to truly understand this, we start to see that what we once thought was missing is actually the essence of all that is present. Emptiness is not the absence of being or existence. It's the realization that all things are fluid, interconnected, and constantly changing, and in this very change lies their completeness. This insight is not easy to grasp because it challenges everything we've been conditioned to believe about ourselves, the world, and our existence. We live in a society that values certainty, permanence, and control. We're taught to believe that happiness, peace, and fulfillment come from achieving stability, from holding on to things, relationships, possessions, status, or even our own identity. The desire to hold on is driven by the belief that without it, we will feel lost, incomplete, or even unworthy. But Buddhism teaches us that the more we hold on, the more we actually create the very sense of lack we fear. When we begin to understand emptiness as a freedom from fixed identity and rigid forms, we liberate ourselves from the suffering that comes with attachment. This realization frees us from the constant pressure to acquire, possess, and protect things that we believe define us. The more we let go, the more we begin to experience the fullness of life in ways we never thought possible. The teachings on Shunyata point out that everything in life, every object, every person, every experience, is empty of inherent, permanent existence. This does not mean that they are without substance, but rather that their nature is not fixed. They are constantly changing, evolving, and interdependent. This emptiness is a kind of freedom because it shows us that nothing is permanent. Nothing is meant to stay the same forever. Every experience, good or bad, is part of a natural flow, and when we stop clinging to the idea of permanence, we can embrace life just as it is. The realization of emptiness begins with seeing that we, too, are not fixed or permanent. We are constantly changing in our thoughts, our emotions, our bodies. The self that we cling to, that we try to define and protect, is also empty of permanent existence. It's like the waves in the ocean. They rise and fall, but there is no wave that exists permanently. The wave is a temporary manifestation of the water. And when we recognize this, we stop identifying ourselves with a fixed identity. We stop attaching to the illusion of permanence, and instead we begin to embrace the fluid, ever-changing nature of who we are. This understanding can be deeply liberating because it shifts our perception of the world. We no longer see ourselves as isolated, separate beings, but as part of an interconnected web of existence. We are not separate from others, from nature, or from the universe. Our existence, like everything else, is shaped by forces beyond our control. And in realizing this, we come to see that nothing is missing. Emptiness does not mean a lack of substance. It means that there is no inherent, unchanging essence in anything. Everything is fluid, interconnected, and, most importantly, whole. The beauty of emptiness is that it reveals the interdependence of all things. Nothing exists in isolation. Every thought, every feeling, every action has a ripple effect, touching everything else in the web of existence. This realization can bring about a profound shift in how we view the world. We stop seeing ourselves as isolated beings trying to find happiness or completeness through external means. Instead, we see that happiness and peace arise from understanding the nature of our interconnection with everything. Emptiness reveals the fullness of life because it shows us that everything is part of a vast, ever-changing and interconnected whole. This isn't a concept that can be understood with the mind alone. It's something that must be felt, experienced, and realized through direct awareness. As you begin to reflect on emptiness, notice how the tension and anxiety that comes from holding on to fixed ideas and identities start to dissolve. The more we embrace the truth of impermanence, the more we allow ourselves to experience the fullness of life as it is. We stop resisting the flow of life, and instead, we flow with it. One of the most profound aspects of the realization of emptiness is that it frees us from attachment and craving. In Buddhism, it is taught that attachment to things, whether it be people, possessions, or ideas, is the root of suffering. We attach ourselves to the idea that we need certain things to feel complete, but when those things inevitably change or leave us, we feel empty, lost, or devastated. When we understand the impermanence of all things, we are less likely to attach ourselves to them, and as a result, we experience less suffering. This realization doesn't mean we become indifferent or detached from the world around us. Instead, it means that we approach life with greater freedom and clarity. We understand that everything is constantly changing, and because of this, we can engage with life more fully. We no longer feel the need to protect ourselves from change, because we understand that change is the nature of life. There is no need to cling to things because they are not permanent, and this is the key to finding peace. By realizing emptiness, we also come to understand the freedom that comes with it. Emptiness is the absence of attachment, and in the absence of attachment, we find that we are no longer prisoners to our desires or fears. We begin to experience the world as it truly is, without the filters of our expectations, judgments, or attachments. This is the freedom that allows us to engage with life fully, without the burden of wanting or needing things to be different from what they are. In the end, the paradox of emptiness as fullness reveals one of the deepest truths of existence, that nothing is missing. Our desire for permanence, for control, for certainty, is what creates the illusion of lack. When we let go of these desires and begin to see the world through the lens of impermanence and interdependence, we realize that we have never been lacking anything. Everything we need is already here, in the flow of life, in the changing patterns of our existence. By recognizing emptiness as the essence of life's fullness, we open ourselves to a deeper understanding of our place in the world. We stop chasing after what we think we need, and instead, we experience the peace and freedom of realizing that nothing is ever truly missing. Emptiness is not something to be afraid of. It is a doorway to understanding the true nature of existence and to finding the peace and wholeness we have been seeking all along. As we continue our exploration of Buddhist wisdom, we now turn our attention to something that has been a driving force in our lives, often without us even realizing it. Desire. This longing for something more, something we believe we need in order to feel complete, is a powerful force that shapes so much of our thoughts, actions, and experiences. The myth of the next thing has conditioned us to believe that once we get something, achieve something, or acquire something, we'll finally feel whole. But, as we've already seen, true fulfillment does not lie in what is outside of us. It lies in understanding the mind and recognizing the very force that keeps us feeling incomplete. Tanha, or craving. In Buddhism, craving is not just a passing wish for something we might want. It's a deep-rooted desire that convinces us that we are not enough as we are, and that something outside of ourselves will complete us. It tells us that we need a new relationship, a better job, a bigger house, or a certain status in order to feel fulfilled. Yet the more we chase after these things, the more we realize that they never provide the lasting happiness or peace we expect. Instead, they often lead us right back to the same place, feeling restless, anxious, and unfulfilled. The root of this is the belief in the myth of the next thing. It's the idea that once we achieve or obtain something else, everything will be better. This myth keeps us in a constant state of wanting, always looking ahead to the next thing, the next milestone, the next desire. And each time we think we're getting closer, we find that the satisfaction is fleeting. This is where tanha plays a role. It leads us to believe that fulfillment is always just out of reach, that something external to us is what we need to feel whole. The problem with this myth is that desire can never truly satisfy us, because it always leads to the next desire. Once one craving is fulfilled, another one takes its place. It's a never-ending cycle of seeking, attaining, and then seeking again. This is the very nature of craving. It promises happiness, but it only leads to dissatisfaction. The Buddha understood this very well, and through his teachings he showed us that the path to true peace does not lie in the pursuit of endless desires, but in recognizing the futility of this pursuit. By understanding tanha, we are given the key to breaking free from this cycle of craving. Buddhist mindfulness practices help us dissolve the myth of the next thing by allowing us to step outside of this constant craving. When we practice mindfulness, we learn to observe our thoughts and desires without becoming attached to them. We start to notice how often we think that something else will make us happy, how often we believe that the next achievement or possession will finally fill the emptiness we feel. But mindfulness shows us that this emptiness is not something to be filled by external things. It is a natural part of the human experience that arises when we forget to connect with the present moment and our true selves. Mindfulness is not about denying our desires or pretending they don't exist. Instead, it's about becoming aware of the ways in which craving shapes our lives. We begin to notice the patterns of our minds, how easily we become consumed by the idea that we need something more to be happy. In recognizing this, we can begin to see how these desires are often rooted in fear, insecurity, or the belief that we are not enough as we are. By seeing these desires for what they truly are, we begin to unravel their hold over us. When we bring awareness to our cravings, we begin to see that they are not the solutions to our problems, but rather the cause of our suffering. Craving leads us to look for happiness outside of ourselves, but it never allows us to find it. The more we try to satisfy it, the more it deepens our sense of emptiness. However, when we realize this truth, something shifts within us. We start to let go of the need for the next thing and instead learn to appreciate the moment we're in, exactly as it is. Through mindfulness, we learn that true fulfillment doesn't come from obtaining anything external. Instead, it comes from returning to the present moment and recognizing that nothing is missing. Our desire for the next thing can only be dissolved by seeing through its illusion, by understanding that happiness is not a future goal, but something we can experience right now. This doesn't mean we stop striving or working toward our goals. It simply means that we no longer attach our happiness or peace to these things. We no longer believe that the next thing will bring us the satisfaction we seek. One of the most powerful aspects of Buddhist teachings is that they show us that satisfaction comes from within. By becoming aware of our cravings and attachments, we can begin to let go of the constant search for something more. True contentment arises when we stop looking for fulfillment outside of ourselves and instead learn to find it in the present moment, in the quiet spaces between our desires, and in the acceptance of things as they are. The key here is not to deny ourselves the things we want or desire, but to change our relationship with them. We don't need to reject our desires or push them away. We simply need to see them clearly and understand that they do not define us. By observing our cravings without attachment, we can begin to appreciate the impermanence of everything, the understanding that nothing will ever fully satisfy us in a lasting way, and that this is okay. It is in this acceptance that we begin to find peace. The more we practice mindfulness, the more we come to realize that the next thing is not the answer. When we stop chasing external fulfillment, we create space for something far deeper and more lasting: inner peace, clarity, and contentment. By letting go of the myth of the next thing, we stop using our desires as a distraction and instead allow ourselves to rest in the fullness of the present moment. In Buddhism, desire is seen as a form of suffering because it keeps us trapped in a cycle of endless wanting. But when we become aware of this cycle, we break free. We start to see that true happiness does not lie in the next goal, the next achievement, or the next possession. It lies in the acceptance of the present moment and the release of the need for more. When we let go of the myth of the next thing, we begin to experience life as it is, full, rich, and complete. Understanding tanha and the myth of the next thing is a powerful way to transform our relationship with desire. It helps us to break free from the cycle of craving and to find peace in the present moment. By practicing mindfulness and becoming aware of our desires, we learn to see them for what they are, temporary and ultimately unfulfilling. The more we understand this, the less power craving has over us. We stop believing that we need something outside of ourselves to complete us, and instead, we begin to realize that we are already whole. Nothing is missing. This is the truth that sets us free from the endless pursuit of the next thing and allows us to experience the fullness of life right here, right now. As we move forward, it's important to understand that all the teachings we've explored so far, from the abundance of the present moment to the realization that nothing is truly missing, are all part of a larger truth about who we are. The myth of lack, the craving for more, and even the illusion of imperfection all stem from one root cause: the fragmented perception of ourselves. We are taught from a young age to view ourselves as incomplete, as if there's something inherently wrong or broken. But deep within, our true nature has never been broken. It's only the way we perceive it that's fragmented. The mirror mind metaphor, central to the Vajrayana tradition of Buddhism, sheds light on this deep-seated misunderstanding. It teaches that the mind itself, like a mirror, is perfectly whole. What appears to be broken, distorted, or incomplete is simply a reflection of the perceptions we have about ourselves and the world around us. The mirror, in its essence, is flawless. It doesn't change, but simply reflects whatever is placed before it. Similarly, our awareness is unbroken and undisturbed, though the way we see and understand ourselves may be clouded by misperceptions. In the Vajrayana teachings, the mind is described as a mirror that reflects everything, all thoughts, feelings, experiences, and perceptions. Just as a mirror does not change based on what it reflects, our true nature is always the same, clear, whole, and unaltered. The only thing that shifts is what we place in front of the mirror. If the reflection appears distorted or unclear, it's not because the mirror itself has changed, but because the image being reflected is flawed. This is exactly how our minds work. We are not broken. We simply have distorted perceptions that shape how we see the world and ourselves. The mirror mind teaches us that the confusion and dissatisfaction we experience are not inherent to our true nature. Instead, they come from the way we engage with the world, from the beliefs, judgments, and attachments that cloud our perception. These misperceptions create a false sense of self, one that believes it is incomplete, broken, or lacking. But the truth is that the awareness itself, the mind that observes everything, is always whole and perfect. When we realize this, something incredible happens. We stop identifying with the distorted reflections of ourselves and start seeing through the confusion. This understanding frees us from the constant cycle of striving to fix ourselves or attain something outside of us to feel whole. We realize that we have always been whole. We simply need to clear away the mental fog to see it. The mirror, which has always been clear, is not the problem. The problem lies in the images we project onto it. When we recognize this, we no longer need to chase after the illusion of completeness through external achievements or possessions. We can finally rest in the truth that nothing is missing. We are whole, just as we are. This concept brings a deep sense of peace because it challenges the core belief that we must become something in order to feel complete. It isn't about becoming perfect. It's about recognizing the perfection that already exists. It's not about fixing what is broken, but seeing that there was never anything broken to begin with. The mirror mind invites us to look beyond the layers of thought, judgment, and attachment that cloud our understanding of ourselves. It shows us that the clear, undisturbed awareness we seek has always been present within us, waiting for us to remember it. What we often don't realize is that the false perceptions we have about ourselves are rooted in the belief that we are somehow separate from the world. We see ourselves as isolated, incomplete beings, always seeking something outside of us to complete us. But just as the mirror cannot exist without the world before it, we too are intrinsically connected to everything around us. The mind reflects the world, and the world reflects the mind. When we understand that our awareness is interdependent with everything, we can start to see the wholeness of our existence, not as a fixed entity, but as a dynamic, interconnected process. In essence, the mirror mind teaches us that our experience of life is shaped by how we engage with it. If we project a sense of lack or incompleteness, that's what we see reflected back to us. But when we stop identifying with these projections and begin to understand that we are not our thoughts or emotions, we start to see the clarity that lies beneath the surface. The mirror, in this sense, is always clean, always ready to reflect what is in front of it. Similarly, our awareness is always clear, but we must be willing to observe it without the distractions of false beliefs and attachments. One of the most powerful realizations that comes from understanding the mirror mind is the ability to shift our relationship with suffering. So often, we view our suffering as something that defines us, as something that proves we are broken or incomplete. But when we understand that our awareness is not the source of our suffering, but rather how we perceive it, we begin to take the first step toward liberation. Suffering is a part of life, but it does not define us. It is simply a reflection of our mental state, a distortion that occurs when we cling to certain beliefs or attachments. When we let go of these attachments, suffering loses its power over us. The mirror doesn't suffer, it simply reflects. And when we shift our understanding of our mind in the same way, we realize that we too are not broken by suffering, but merely reflecting it. This insight shifts the way we approach our thoughts and emotions. We begin to see that they are not permanent fixtures of our identity. They are temporary reflections that pass through the mind, much like clouds passing through the sky. We don't have to hold on to them, nor do we need to identify with them. Instead, we can observe them with a sense of detachment, understanding that they do not define us. The more we practice this, the clearer our minds become, and the more we recognize that the reflection is not the reality. The reality is the mind itself, the clear, undisturbed awareness that is always present. When we engage in this practice, we also begin to release the need for external validation. Much of the pain we experience comes from the belief that we are only worthy or complete if others recognize our worth. This creates an endless cycle of seeking approval and acceptance from the outside world, which only reinforces the belief that we are incomplete. But the mirror mind shows us that our worth and completeness are not dependent on the reflections of others. Just as a mirror does not need anyone to validate its reflection, we do not need external approval to feel whole. Our true worth is inherent in our nature, and the more we recognize this, the less we feel the need to seek validation from others. This is where true freedom lies, in the understanding that we are not our thoughts and we are not the reflections of others. We are simply the awareness through which everything is experienced. When we let go of the need for validation, we begin to experience the wholeness that has always been there. We stop seeing ourselves as fragmented, separate beings, and instead recognize that we are a part of a larger, interconnected whole. The mirror mind teaches us to stop identifying with the fragmented perceptions that create a false sense of self. The reflections that appear before the mind are not the mind itself. The thoughts, emotions, and experiences that arise are not permanent, and they are not who we are. When we stop clinging to these fleeting reflections, we begin to experience the clarity and wholeness of the mind itself. We realize that the mirror is not broken, and neither are we. This shift in perspective is profound because it frees us from the need to constantly chase after something that will make us feel whole. We no longer need to search for fulfillment outside of ourselves. Instead, we can simply rest in the awareness of our true nature. the mind that has always been clear, whole, and undisturbed. When we recognize this, we find peace, we find freedom, and most importantly, we find that we were never broken to begin with. Having just explored the concept of the mirror mind, it becomes clear that our perception of ourselves and the world is clouded not by the mind itself, but by the constant flow of thoughts that we identify with. These thoughts come and go, often creating a sense of fragmentation and leading us to believe that we are incomplete or lacking. However, what if the true essence of who we are exists in the moments between those thoughts, in the stillness that is often overshadowed by the noise of the mind? This is where the practice of meditation and the discovery of the space between thoughts reveal a profound truth. We have never been broken, and everything we are searching for is already within us. In our daily lives, we are constantly caught up in the rush of thoughts, worries, plans, judgments, and distractions that keep us moving from one moment to the next without ever really pausing. It feels like we are perpetually caught in a whirlwind of internal chatter, never able to fully rest or feel at ease. But beneath this constant stream of thoughts, there is a subtle space, a gap that exists in every moment. It's in these moments of silence that we can experience a direct connection with our true nature, an experience of inner completeness that we often overlook because we're too focused on the noise. Meditation is the practice of turning our attention to these spaces, of learning to observe our thoughts without getting attached to them or swept away by them. When we sit in stillness, we begin to notice that between each thought there is a brief pause. This pause is where true peace resides. It's not something we need to create or attain. It's already there, waiting for us to recognize it. The more we practice meditation, the more we start to see that these gaps are not merely empty or meaningless moments. Rather, they are rich with the possibility of presence. In the beginning, the silence between thoughts may seem elusive, difficult to grasp. It might feel like a fleeting moment that slips away too quickly. But over time, through consistent meditation practice, we begin to realize that this silence is always present, underlying every thought, every emotion, and every sensation. It's in the spaces between the words we speak, the gaps between the breaths we take, and the stillness that comes when we simply let go of the need to control or define our experience. As we learn to rest in this silence, we start to uncover a deep sense of inner completeness. This is not the type of completeness that comes from external achievements or possessions, but the kind that is inherent in simply being. We begin to see that we don't need to fill the silence with thoughts, words, or actions in order to feel whole. In fact, it is in this very silence that we find that everything we've been searching for is already within us. When we step back and allow ourselves to simply be present with the silence, we discover something incredibly profound. We are not our thoughts. We are not the constant stream of judgments, desires, and worries that pass through our minds. Our true nature is the awareness that watches these thoughts come and go. This awareness is steady, unchanging, and whole. It is the very essence of who we are, but it often gets buried beneath the noise of the mind. Meditation allows us to uncover this awareness and reconnect with the stillness that has always been present within us. The practice of meditation, then, is not about escaping from our thoughts or emotions, but about learning to observe them without becoming attached to them. Thoughts will continue to arise, but instead of identifying with them or letting them define us, we learn to simply observe them as they come and go. In doing so, we create space to experience the fullness of the present moment, space to connect with the underlying completeness of who we are. It is in this space that we can feel a deep sense of peace, a peace that is not dependent on anything outside of us. The world around us may be filled with chaos, but when we tap into this silence within, we find that we are no longer disturbed by the noise. We realize that the true source of our peace is not external circumstances or achievements, but the stillness within, the gap between thoughts where our true essence resides. What we discover in these moments of silence is that our mind, in its essence, is already whole. It does not need to be fixed, changed, or perfected. It only needs to be recognized. And the more we practice meditation, the more we begin to realize that the space between thoughts is where this recognition happens. It is where we remember that we are not defined by the fleeting thoughts or feelings that come and go. Instead, we are the awareness that witnesses them. In time, this practice of connecting with the silence between thoughts can transform the way we relate to our thoughts, our emotions, and our lives. We stop identifying with the fleeting fluctuations of the mind, and instead, we begin to rest in the awareness of our true self, the unchanging, unbroken essence of who we are. This awareness has always been present. It is not something we need to attain. It is who we have always been, beneath the layers of thoughts and distractions. The space between thoughts also teaches us an important lesson about the nature of time. We often feel as though we are constantly chasing after the future or dwelling on the past, always trying to accomplish more or fix what has already been done. But when we connect with the silence, we realize that time is not something we need to grasp or control. In the present moment, there is no past or future, only the now. It is in this timelessness that we can experience a deep sense of freedom, because we no longer feel the need to rush or worry. We realize that everything is unfolding as it should, and that we are part of this unfolding, not separate from it. This understanding of time, coupled with the silence between thoughts, allows us to let go of our constant striving. We no longer feel the need to fill every moment with activity or thought. Instead, we learn to simply be present with whatever is arising, without judgment or expectation. In this state of presence, we experience a profound sense of wholeness and peace, because we are no longer fragmented by the past or future. We are simply living in the moment, fully aware and at ease. Over time, as we cultivate this awareness of the silence between thoughts, we begin to notice that we are more grounded, more present, and less affected by the fluctuations of our thoughts and emotions. We no longer feel as though we are at the mercy of our minds, but instead we realize that we have the ability to rest in the stillness and experience a sense of deep fulfillment and completeness. This is not a fleeting happiness that depends on external conditions, but a lasting peace that comes from recognizing our true nature. In essence, the silence between thoughts is a direct experience of the wholeness that we have always sought. It is not something we need to achieve, but something we can access right now, in this very moment. By letting go of the need to fill the silence with thoughts or distractions, we make space for the deeper truth of who we are to emerge. We realize that we have never been incomplete. We have always been whole. As we've uncovered the profound silence that exists between our thoughts and the unbroken awareness within us, it's clear that true fulfillment doesn't lie in grandiose achievements or moments of extraordinary insight. In fact, it's often in the most ordinary, everyday actions that we encounter the deepest sense of peace and clarity. This understanding shifts the way we view our lives. We stop searching for enlightenment in the distant future and instead begin to realize that the present moment, in all its simplicity, is where true wisdom and contentment can be found. The teachings of sati, or mindfulness, remind us that enlightenment isn't reserved for extraordinary experiences, but for the quiet, everyday moments that make up our lives. The simple act of washing a dish, walking a step, or even sitting quietly is an opportunity to connect with the present moment. So often, we overlook these mundane tasks, thinking that true fulfillment lies somewhere else, in the future or in a distant pursuit. But mindfulness invites us to see that every moment, no matter how simple or routine, is a doorway to peace, insight, and wholeness. Mindfulness doesn't require us to escape our lives or seek out extraordinary events. Instead, it invites us to fully engage with whatever is in front of us, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem. It teaches us to be present with what is happening right now, without judgment or distraction. Whether we are washing dishes, taking a walk, or eating a meal, these everyday actions can become profound moments of connection, where we experience life exactly as it is, free from the need to change or escape. The beauty of mindfulness lies in its simplicity. It's not about creating a special state of mind or searching for deep, transcendental experiences. It's about noticing and appreciating the present as it is. When we practice mindfulness, we start to see the depth and richness in everything around us. We notice the texture of the soap as we wash a dish, the rhythm of our breath as we walk, the taste of food as we eat. These simple moments, when fully experienced, become moments of connection, not just with the world, but with ourselves. When we slow down and bring our awareness to the present moment, we can let go of the need to rush through life or constantly seek the next thing. There's no need to go anywhere or do anything extraordinary to find peace. In fact, it's often the opposite. The more we focus on the present, on what's happening right now, the more we discover that true fulfillment doesn't come from external achievements, but from the simple act of being present with whatever is in front of us. It's easy to dismiss the everyday tasks as unimportant, but in doing so, we miss the opportunity to truly live. Life doesn't happen in grand moments of excitement or dramatic achievements. It happens in the small, ordinary moments that fill our day. These moments, when experienced fully and with mindfulness, carry with them the potential for profound wisdom. The act of washing dishes, for example, can become a moment of awareness, not just of the task at hand, but of our mind, our breath, and our connection to the present moment. It's not about how well we wash the dish, but about how we engage with the dishwashing itself with full awareness. When we begin to practice mindfulness in the simple tasks of life, we start to experience a sense of peace that isn't dependent on anything external. It's not about waiting for the perfect moment or the right circumstances. It's about realizing that every moment is the perfect moment for mindfulness, and every action is an opportunity to reconnect with our true nature. Mindfulness helps us to let go of the constant search for meaning or purpose in the big events of life. We stop seeking happiness, peace, or enlightenment in external things, and instead recognize that all of it is available to us in the present moment. The simple act of walking can become a meditation. The act of washing a dish can become a way to center ourselves. These ordinary moments are not distractions or obstacles to our spiritual practice. They are the practice itself. They invite us to be fully present, to see the world as it is, and to experience life without judgment or expectation. This shift in perspective can change the way we approach everything in our lives. We stop rushing through tasks, trying to get to the next thing. Instead, we start to appreciate the richness of the moment, even in the most mundane of actions. Mindfulness transforms our experience of life, allowing us to live more fully, more completely, and with a deeper sense of peace. We no longer feel the need to chase after enlightenment or happiness, because we realize that they are already here, in the simple, everyday moments of life. The key to mindfulness is awareness, being fully present with whatever is happening without distraction or judgment. This isn't something we have to strive for. It's simply a matter of paying attention to the world around us. When we walk, we walk. When we eat, we eat. When we wash dishes, we wash dishes. These actions, when done with mindfulness, become opportunities to experience life more deeply, more fully, and more authentically. Through mindfulness, we learn that the essence of life is found not in seeking something more, but in being present with what we already have. The act of washing a dish, for example, is not just about cleaning. It's about engaging with the present moment, feeling the warmth of the water, noticing the texture of the dish, listening to the sound of the water running. In that moment, there is no need to think about the past or the future. There is only the present. And in that presence, we find everything we need. The simplicity of the moment becomes profound. The beauty of this practice is that it is available to us at all times. Mindfulness doesn't require special conditions or circumstances. It's not something we need to seek out or prepare for. It's something we can practice in every moment, in every action, in every breath, whether we're washing dishes, walking, eating, or simply sitting. Each moment is an opportunity to return to the present, to be fully aware, and to experience the richness of life as it is. In a world that constantly encourages us to move faster, achieve more, and seek more, mindfulness offers a different way of being. It teaches us to slow down, to pay attention to the present, and to realize that true fulfillment isn't something we need to chase after. It's already here, in the simplicity of life itself. We don't need to go anywhere or do anything extraordinary to find peace. All we need to do is be present in the ordinary moments that make up our lives. As we continue to practice mindfulness, we begin to notice a subtle but profound shift in the way we relate to the world. We stop viewing the ordinary as insignificant, and instead, we see that the ordinary is sacred. Every moment is an opportunity for connection, for presence, for peace. Whether we are washing a dish or taking a step, we begin to experience the fullness of life, not in the future, but in the present. And in this realization, we find that everything we've been searching for, has always been right in front of us, waiting for us to notice. Having explored the peace that arises from the simple, everyday moments through mindfulness, we now confront a deeper challenge: the seemingly endless cycle of dissatisfaction that so many of us face. It often feels like we are stuck in a repetitive loop, continuously seeking something outside of ourselves to find meaning, satisfaction, and peace. But in Buddhist teachings, samsara, this cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, is not seen as a prison or punishment, but rather as a profound teacher. It invites us to recognize that wholeness has never been absent, that even within the endless cycle of dissatisfaction, there is a path to understanding, peace, and true freedom. We've been conditioned to view dissatisfaction, suffering, and the recurring challenges in our lives as signs of something being wrong, a sign that we are not where we need to be. But what if, instead of seeing samsara as a trap, we could view it as an opportunity to learn and grow? In Buddhism, samsara is not the absence of meaning or peace, but the very condition that provides the teachings to help us understand the truth of impermanence and the illusion of attachment. The cycles of craving, dissatisfaction, and struggle that we experience daily are not punishments. They are invitations to recognize the fullness of life that is always available, if we learn to embrace it. When we see samsara as a teacher, we begin to shift our perspective. We no longer view the difficulties in our lives as something to escape from or avoid, but as opportunities to learn about the nature of our minds, our attachments, and the very essence of who we are. These challenges and the repetitive nature of our desires and cravings are not traps. They are mirrors reflecting back to us the places where we still cling to impermanent things. The moment we stop resisting this cycle, we start to see that it is through the cycles of samsara that we can awaken to the truth of our wholeness. It's easy to feel trapped in the patterns of dissatisfaction, to think that no matter how much we strive, how many achievements we collect, the sense of emptiness never truly goes away. But this feeling is a misunderstanding of samsara. The more we cling to the belief that satisfaction lies somewhere outside of us, the deeper we fall into the cycle. Each time we reach for something and it doesn't give us lasting satisfaction, we think it's the fault of the external world. But samsara, as a teacher, reminds us that the source of suffering lies in our attachment, in the belief that something external can bring us true, lasting peace. The path of awakening in Buddhism is not about escaping samsara. It is about fully engaging with it, understanding it, and recognizing the inherent wisdom within it. When we realize that samsara is not a punishment but a teacher, we can begin to approach life with curiosity and openness. Every cycle of dissatisfaction becomes a chance to inquire, why do I feel this craving? What am I really seeking? The cycles of samsara are an invitation to look more deeply into our desires, our attachments, and the root causes of our suffering. And as we do, we come closer to understanding that true peace does not come from fulfilling these desires, but from letting go of the illusion that these desires can ever lead us to lasting happiness. Samsara teaches us that life is cyclical, constantly moving, shifting, and changing. When we try to hold on to things, when we seek permanence in a world that is by nature impermanent, we inevitably find ourselves frustrated, dissatisfied, and confused. But instead of falling into despair over the endless cycle, we can recognize that samsara is the very condition that reveals the truth of impermanence. Everything, our emotions, our relationships, our possessions, will eventually change. This is the law of the universe, and it is in accepting this impermanence that we find peace. The realization that everything is temporary, including our cravings and desires, is the key to freedom. Samsara, in all its repetitiveness, is showing us this truth every day. The greatest lesson samsara offers is that we do not need to escape it. We are already free. Free not by avoiding life cycles, but by recognizing that they do not define us. We are not our cravings. We are not our failures. We are not our desires. These are transient, ever-changing experiences. But beneath all of them lies the unchanging awareness of who we truly are. This awareness is not something we need to search for it has always been there, beyond the cycles of samsara. When we learn to step outside of the illusion of permanence, we begin to experience life from a place of wholeness, regardless of what happens around us. By understanding samsara as a teacher, we start to see the freedom in letting go of attachment. The constant cycles of craving and dissatisfaction are the result of attachment to things we believe will bring us lasting fulfillment. We cling to relationships, achievements, possessions, and identities, believing they define us and bring us peace. But samsara teaches us that nothing external can provide lasting fulfillment. In fact, it is our attachment to these things that creates the suffering we experience. When we let go of the belief that anything in the external world can provide us with lasting happiness, we free ourselves from the endless cycle of craving. The more we practice this understanding, the more we realize that samsara is not something that needs to be escaped from, but something that can be fully embraced. Each moment of dissatisfaction is an opportunity to practice mindfulness, to observe our attachments, and to remind ourselves that true peace comes from within. The cycles of samsara, whether they be feelings of longing, frustration, or fear, are part of the human condition. But they are not the enemy. They are the path. They are the guideposts that show us where we are still holding on, where we are still trapped in the illusion that something outside of us will make us complete. Rather than seeing samsara as a source of pain and suffering, we begin to see it as a teacher that shows us where we need to grow, where we need to let go, and where we need to change. It isn't a punishment for our mistakes. It is the natural rhythm of life, and in that rhythm we find opportunities for awakening. Samsara is the very environment in which we can wake up to the truth of who we are. The more we understand samsara, the less we fear it. We stop looking for a way out and start engaging with the present moment as it is. Each cycle, each repetition, becomes a chance to practice letting go of our attachment to things, to stop identifying with the temporary nature of life. And in doing so, we begin to realize that nothing is missing. We are already whole. The cycles of samsara, rather than trapping us, actually reveal to us the wholeness that has always been present beneath the surface of our desires and frustrations. So, instead of trying to escape samsara or find a way to end the cycle, we begin to see that the cycle itself is the path. It's not about trying to break free from suffering. It's about recognizing that suffering itself is the doorway to awakening. By embracing samsara as a teacher, we learn to step beyond our attachments and find peace not by avoiding life, but by fully living it with awareness. In the end, the wholeness we've been seeking is not somewhere outside of us. It is here, in the middle of the cycle, in the midst of samsara, where we have always been. Having journeyed through the understanding of samsara as a teacher rather than a prison, we now find ourselves at a crossroads where we encounter something deeply ingrained in our experience, the sense of I, that inner voice that tells us who we are, what we need, and what we must achieve in order to feel complete. This sense of self, often so deeply felt, is the root of much of our craving and dissatisfaction. We chase after things because we believe that they will define us or complete us, but this pursuit only reinforces the illusion that we are somehow lacking. In truth, the ego is constructed not from a place of wholeness, but from comparison and craving, and it is only by dissolving this illusion that we come to experience the quiet perfection of simply being. The ego, often seen as the center of our identity, is not a fixed, unchanging entity. It is shaped by our experiences, thoughts, and especially by comparison. We measure ourselves against others, against societal standards, against an idealized version of who we think we should be. This comparison leads to an endless cycle of craving, where we believe that achieving certain goals or acquiring certain things will finally bring us fulfillment. The ego whispers that we are not enough and that only by attaining or becoming something else will we be whole. But the truth is that the ego itself is a creation of these very desires and comparisons, a false self that keeps us trapped in the illusion of lack. This constant striving for more, for better, for different, builds a false sense of identity, one that is always changing and always dependent on external factors. The ego is not an authentic reflection of who we truly are. It is a reaction to external influences, a fragile construct that shifts with each new experience or comparison. We find ourselves constantly chasing after a version of ourselves that is better, more accomplished, more loved. But the more we chase, the more we lose touch with our true nature. We become identified with the ego and forget that beneath all the layers of comparison and craving, there is a quiet perfection of being that is already complete. The process of dissolving the ego begins with recognizing that this sense of self we so strongly identify with is not our true nature. The more we cling to the ego, the more we reinforce the illusion of lack. The ego tells us we are separate, that we must achieve or acquire something in order to be worthy. But when we begin to question this belief, we start to see that our true nature is not defined by what we have or who we think we are. It is not shaped by comparison or external circumstances. It simply is. And in that simple being, we find the wholeness that we've been searching for all along. In the practice of mindfulness, we begin to observe how our thoughts, actions, and even our emotions are often driven by the desire to fulfill the demands of the ego. We notice how easily we compare ourselves to others and how these comparisons fuel our cravings. But as we become more aware of these patterns, we begin to see them for what they are, fleeting thoughts and perceptions, not solid truths. The more we recognize these patterns, the more we begin to realize that we are not our thoughts or our cravings. We are the awareness that observes them. And in that awareness, we uncover the truth that we are already complete, just as we are. The illusion of lack is the ego's greatest trick. It convinces us that we need more success, more recognition, more possessions to feel worthy. But when we let go of the need to prove our worth, to compare ourselves to others, and to measure our value by external standards, we begin to experience a peace that comes from simply being. This peace is not the result of achieving something, but the result of recognizing that we are enough exactly as we are. The quiet perfection of being is already present within us, free from the ego's demands and comparisons. When we stop identifying with the ego, we stop identifying with the stories we've told ourselves about who we are and what we need. We begin to experience the world without the filter of judgment and comparison. We stop seeing ourselves as separate from others, and instead we recognize our deep interconnectedness with all beings. We see that we are not lacking anything. We have always been whole. This realization is not something that we have to work toward. It's simply a matter of letting go of the illusion of separation that the ego creates. As we begin to dissolve the ego's grip on our identity, we start to experience a sense of freedom that is beyond the reach of craving or comparison. We no longer need to prove ourselves or compete with others. We no longer need to chase after external validation. True freedom arises when we stop trying to be something we are not and simply rest in the peace of who we already are. This is the quiet perfection of being, the awareness that we are not our achievements, not our failures, but the unchanging, perfect awareness that observes them. In understanding the ego's illusion of lack, we begin to see the paradox that lies at the heart of spiritual awakening. The more we let go of the desire to become something or attain something, the more we realize that we have never been anything less than whole. The ego tells us that we need to change, that we need to do more, but in truth, the only thing that needs to change is our perception. When we stop identifying with the stories of scarcity and need, we begin to experience the abundant nature of our true self. The ego is not inherently bad, but it becomes problematic when we let it define us, when we let it dictate our sense of worth and our relationship to the world. The more we believe the ego's narrative of lack and separation, the more we reinforce the illusion that we are incomplete. But when we stop identifying with this narrative, we can begin to experience the world as it truly is, a place of wholeness and interconnectedness. This shift in perspective can be profound. When we stop identifying with the ego, we begin to feel a sense of oneness with everything around us. We stop comparing ourselves to others and start appreciating them for who they truly are. We stop trying to prove ourselves to the world and start simply being. This shift from ego-based living to awareness-based living is not something we have to force or strive for. It is simply the natural result of recognizing that we are already whole. Through mindfulness and self-awareness, we start to peel away the layers of comparison, judgment, and craving that the ego has built around us. And in doing so, we reveal the quiet perfection that has always been within. The more we let go of the ego's need to define us, the more we begin to experience the peace, contentment, and fulfillment that are already part of our true nature. In the end, the ego's illusion of lack is just that, an illusion. Once we see through it, we discover that we have never been lacking anything. We are already perfect, just as we are. As we begin to dissolve the illusion of the ego and experience the quiet perfection of being, we step into a deeper understanding of ourselves and our connection to the world. This understanding opens the door to one of the most profound and transformative aspects of the human experience: compassion. Compassion, often misunderstood as self-sacrifice or something that drains us, is actually a path to wholeness. It is not an act that depletes us, but one that unites us with others in the most powerful way. True compassion, karuna, arises when we realize that the suffering of others is not separate from our own. In this realization, we begin to see that when we extend compassion, we are also healing and completing ourselves. For so long, we have been conditioned to see compassion as a kind of charity, something we do for others at the cost of ourselves. We often hear the phrase, giving of oneself, which implies a depletion, a loss. But in the context of karuna, true compassion is not about giving away something we cannot afford to lose. It's not about putting others' needs above our own at the expense of our well-being. Compassion is the recognition that we are all interconnected, and in recognizing the pain of another, we come closer to the truth of who we are. The suffering of others is not something that exists outside of us. It is something that reflects our own struggles, our own humanity. And in acknowledging this, we begin to experience a profound sense of wholeness and unity. This shift in understanding changes the way we approach compassion. Rather than seeing it as an obligation or a sacrifice, we begin to understand it as an act of unity. When we extend compassion, we are not only helping others, but we are also embracing and healing ourselves. The more we see that others' suffering is not separate from our own, the more we realize that by relieving their pain, we are also addressing the pain within us. True compassion unites. It connects us to each other, and in doing so, it brings us closer to the fullness of our own being. To understand this fully, we need to look at how attachment and ego often distort our perception of compassion. The ego tells us that we are separate, that we are isolated beings who must protect and prioritize ourselves. In this worldview, extending compassion can feel like a sacrifice, a loss of energy or resources for someone else's benefit. But when we dissolve the ego and see through the illusion of separation, we begin to see that to help another is to help ourselves. Our suffering is not isolated. When one person suffers, it affects the whole. And when one person heals, the ripple effects extend outward, touching everyone. This realization brings with it a shift in how we experience compassion. It is no longer something that drains us, but something that replenishes us. We begin to recognize that when we serve others, we are not losing something. We are gaining something that is fundamental to our well-being. Compassion, rather than being a sacrifice, becomes a return to our true nature. It is a recognition that our well-being is tied to the well-being of all others. When we lift the burden from another, we, in turn, experience a sense of freedom and peace within ourselves. This is the power of karuna. It is not just an act of kindness, but an act that completes us. The practice of compassion does not ask us to give up our needs or neglect our own well-being. Instead, it asks us to expand our awareness beyond our individual experience and recognize the interconnectedness of all beings. It invites us to see that our happiness, peace, and fulfillment are not separate from those of others. This understanding dissolves the barriers of separation that the ego has built, allowing us to act with greater love, care, and presence. As we give to others, we are not just sharing resources, we are sharing a sense of unity, the recognition that in helping others, we are helping ourselves. In the practice of mindful compassion, we begin to see that the act of extending love, care, and understanding to others is not just an altruistic gesture, but a path to healing our own wounds. The more we open ourselves to the suffering of others, the more we come to understand our own suffering. Compassion becomes a mirror that reflects back to us the parts of ourselves that need attention, care, and love. By acknowledging the pain of others, we also acknowledge our own vulnerability and humanity. This act of recognition is what brings us to wholeness. It is through compassion that we see our interdependence and the truth that we are not separate, but part of a greater whole. True compassion is also about presence, being there for another without trying to fix or change their experience. Often, we feel compelled to alleviate another's suffering by offering solutions or advice. But compassion doesn't require us to have the answers. It only requires us to be present, to listen, and to offer our hearts without expectation. This is the beauty of karuna. It is not about the act of fixing someone's pain, but about offering them the space to be, to feel, and to experience their emotions without judgment. In doing this, we allow others to feel seen and heard, and in that simple act of presence, we create a space for healing. This is why compassion is so deeply transformative. It does not require us to be perfect or to have all the answers. It only requires us to open our hearts, to recognize the suffering of others as our own, and to be present with them in their pain. The more we practice this kind of compassion, the more we see that our humanity is bound together. When one person suffers, we all suffer, and when one person heals, we all heal. This truth is not just a philosophical idea, but a lived experience. The more we engage in compassionate action, the more we experience the unity of all beings. As we begin to practice compassion, we start to shift our perspective on our own suffering as well. No longer do we see it as something that separates us from others, but as something that connects us to them. Our pain becomes a doorway to understanding, a way to bridge the gap between ourselves and others. When we allow ourselves to feel compassion for others, we also open ourselves up to receive compassion from others, from the world, and from ourselves. This exchange of compassion is not depleting, but enriching. It is a cycle of love and healing that nourishes us all. In the end, compassion is not about sacrifice, it is about recognition. It is about recognizing that we are not separate from one another, and that in helping another, we are also helping ourselves. When we dissolve the illusion of separateness, we see that compassion is the natural expression of our interconnectedness. It is not something we have to work for or strive to do. It is simply who we are, waiting to be expressed. Through compassion, we return to the truth of our being, and in doing so, we experience the wholeness that we have always sought. Having explored the profound impact of compassion and the realization that we are all interconnected, we now turn our attention to a deeply important aspect of our inner experience: contentment. in a world that constantly tells us that we need more possessions, more success, more approval. It's easy to feel like we are always falling short, always reaching for something just beyond our grasp. This relentless desire for more, this endless wanting, is what the Buddha referred to as a source of suffering. But what if there was a way to transform this sense of never being enough into the realization that we are already enough? This is the essence of Santutti, the Dharma of enough. In our modern lives, the pursuit of more is often glorified. We are told that in order to be happy, we must acquire more, do more, achieve more. We're constantly comparing ourselves to others, measuring our success by the standards set by society, or even by our own internal expectations. But in this constant pursuit, we lose touch with the reality that we already have everything we need. This endless desire for more often leads to feelings of inadequacy, frustration, and dissatisfaction. We are never quite satisfied, no matter how much we acquire, because the desire for more is insatiable. But when we practice contentment, we shift our entire relationship with the world. The practice of Santutti teaches us to see the richness in what we already have. It's not about giving up on our aspirations or ambitions, but about recognizing that true fulfillment does not come from external possessions or achievements. Instead, it comes from cultivating an internal sense of peace, of knowing that we are already complete, exactly as we are. This realization allows us to step out of the cycle of craving and seeking into a place of deep inner satisfaction. The simple act of being content with what we have, rather than constantly chasing after something more, opens up a profound sense of freedom. In the context of modern life, the disease of endless wanting can feel overwhelming. Everywhere we look, we are bombarded with messages that we need more things, more experiences, more success. Social media amplifies this feeling as we compare ourselves to the carefully curated lives of others. We begin to believe that happiness is something that is always just out of reach, dependent on the next purchase, the next achievement, or the next milestone. But the teachings of Santutti show us that this constant yearning only keeps us trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction. We believe that something is missing, that we are lacking, but the truth is that we are already whole. The practice of contentment doesn't ask us to ignore our desires or abandon our ambitions. It simply asks us to shift our focus. Instead of constantly seeking external sources of fulfillment, we begin to cultivate a sense of peace with what we already have. We start to see the beauty and richness in the present moment, in the small things that we often overlook. Whether it's the warmth of a cup of tea, the sound of birds outside our window, or the simple act of being with loved ones, these moments are full of abundance, if we allow ourselves to see them. Contentment arises from this simple recognition that life, in its current form, is already enough. When we embrace the Dharma of enough, we begin to see that we are not defined by what we own, what we achieve, or how others perceive us. We are already whole, and everything we need to live a meaningful and fulfilling life is available to us in this very moment. Contentment does not mean complacency or a lack of ambition. It means understanding that fulfillment comes from within. We begin to see that we don't need to constantly reach for something else in order to be happy. Happiness arises from being present with what is, and recognizing that we have everything we need right now. The true power of Santutthi lies in its ability to break the cycle of craving. When we cultivate contentment, we stop seeing life as a series of unmet needs, and instead begin to experience it as a rich and abundant offering. This shift in perspective transforms our relationship with the world. No longer are we chasing after things to fill a void. Instead, we are fully present with what we have, appreciating it deeply and finding joy in the moment. In this way, contentment becomes a source of peace because it is not dependent on anything outside of us. It is a recognition that everything we need is already within reach. The practice of Santutthi also teaches us to let go of the constant comparison that drives our desires. In a world that constantly encourages us to compare ourselves to others, it is easy to believe that we are falling short, that we need more to be complete. But when we practice contentment, we release the need to compare our lives to anyone else's. We stop measuring our worth by the standards set by others and instead begin to find our value in our own hearts. This shift frees us from the constant pressure to achieve or possess more. We realize that our worth is not determined by external accomplishments. Instead, it comes from the simple fact that we are alive, that we are whole, and that we are enough. As we deepen our practice of contentment, we find that it also leads to greater generosity. When we feel that we are already enough, we no longer feel the need to hoard or cling to what we have. We are more willing to share, to give, and to help others because we recognize that there is no lack. We are not limited by what we have or don't have. The more we embrace the Dharma of enough, the more we realize that true abundance comes from giving, not accumulating. This realization allows us to experience the joy of sharing and contributing, knowing that by giving, we enrich our own lives. At the heart of the Dharma of enough is the practice of gratitude. The more we cultivate contentment, the more we begin to appreciate what we already have. We stop focusing on what is missing and begin to focus on what is present in our lives. This shift in focus changes everything. We begin to see the abundance around us, in our relationships, in the simple acts of daily life, and in the world itself. Gratitude grows from the recognition that we are surrounded by more than enough. It is the recognition that we are enough, just as we are. In this way, practicing contentment is a radical shift from the culture of endless wanting that surrounds us. It is a shift from believing that we need more to be happy to realizing that we already have everything we need. Santutthi is not about giving up our desires or goals, but about recognizing that true fulfillment is found within. It is about stepping out of the cycle of craving and into a life of peace, presence, and abundance. By embracing the Dharma of enough, we free ourselves from the endless pursuit of more, and we discover the true richness of life that is available to us in every moment. When we begin to live from a place of contentment, we experience the world differently. We stop chasing after things that will never satisfy us, and instead, we begin to see the profound beauty in what we already have. We realize that we are not lacking anything, and in this realization, we discover a deep sense of peace and satisfaction that doesn't depend on anything external. In the Dharma of enough, we come home to ourselves, to the truth that we are already whole and that nothing is missing. Having explored the transformative power of contentment and the realization that we are enough just as we are, we now arrive at an understanding that bridges the gap between our material needs and our deeper sense of inner peace. Detachment, often misunderstood as renunciation or withdrawal, holds a key insight that allows us to live fully in the world without being bound by it. The Buddhist concept of upekkha, equanimity or detachment, invites us to step into a space where having and being no longer conflict. Instead, we learn to experience material sufficiency and existential peace as interconnected, not separate. This delicate balance allows us to live with grace, contentment, and freedom. In our modern world, we are constantly bombarded by messages that equate happiness with accumulation. We are told that success, status, and possessions are signs of fulfillment. But the more we acquire, the more we realize that these things often fail to deliver lasting peace. The pursuit of more leaves us in a state of endless striving, never quite content with what we have. On the other hand, there's also a growing awareness that detachment doesn't mean rejecting material things, but rather releasing the need to define ourselves by them. The middle path, guided by the teachings of upekkha, shows us how to cultivate a sense of peace that isn't dependent on what we own or achieve. The space between having and being represents the liberation from the illusion that external things define us. We live in a society where the accumulation of wealth, success, or possessions is often seen as a mark of personal worth. However, upekkha teaches us that true worth is not found in external conditions, but in the awareness of our true nature. When we detach from the need to have more, we open up space to simply be. This isn't about rejecting life's pleasures or material goods, but about understanding that our peace and happiness are not dependent on them. By practicing equanimity, we learn to live without grasping, to receive without clinging, and to give without attachment. Upekkha doesn't ask us to abandon the world or our desires. It asks us to recognize that our peace is not contingent on what we have or don't have. We begin to understand that true contentment arises from the present moment, from the awareness that we are already complete, independent of external factors. This shift in perspective allows us to experience the world fully without being swept away by the waves of desire or the fear of losing what we have. The space between having and being is a place where we recognize that material sufficiency and inner peace coexist. It is not a contradiction, but rather a reconciliation of two aspects of our human experience. While material needs must be met for survival, they do not define our happiness or sense of self-worth. Upekkha allows us to live in the world without being attached to it, to engage with life without being consumed by it. It invites us to see that the true source of fulfillment is not in possessing things, but in understanding that we are already complete. This insight is not about rejecting wealth or success. It's about understanding that these things, while necessary, are not the measure of our lives. When we attach our identity to what we have, we become vulnerable to loss. We fear losing our possessions, our status, or our achievements, and in doing so, we place our happiness in something that is ultimately impermanent. However, when we cultivate detachment, we begin to experience the freedom of not being defined by external circumstances. we realize that our true self is not defined by what we have or don't have, but by who we are at the core. In Buddhist teachings, detachment does not mean indifference or neglect. It is a gentle, mindful way of engaging with the world without being attached to the outcome. It is a practice of living fully in the world, but not being bound by it. This middle way frees us from the cycle of endless wanting. When we release our need for more, we discover that we already have enough. This recognition is profound. It brings peace because we no longer feel the need to constantly strive, compare, or accumulate. We are simply at peace with what is. The space between having and being also teaches us the importance of mindful consumption. We begin to recognize that our desires are not inherently wrong, but when we are driven by a sense of lack, they lead to suffering. The key is to consume mindfully, whether it is material goods, experiences, or even food, and to do so without attachment. We learn to enjoy what we have without the need for more. This is not about abstaining from pleasure or enjoyment, but about recognizing that true satisfaction is found in the experience itself, not in the accumulation of things. When we practice upekkha, we experience a shift in our relationship with both wealth and scarcity. We stop seeing wealth as the source of happiness and scarcity as the source of pain. Instead, we recognize that contentment comes from within. Whether we have much or little, we begin to realize that peace does not come from acquiring things, but from the awareness of the present moment. We stop thinking of life as a series of goals to be achieved or obstacles to be overcome. Instead, we see that life itself is a gift, and the experience of being alive is enough. This acceptance of what is brings us peace because we no longer need to chase after something more. This doesn't mean we become passive or indifferent to the world. Upekkha invites us to be active participants in life, but without the need for control or possession. It teaches us that we can engage fully with life without being consumed by it. We can pursue our goals, but we don't need them to define us. We can enjoy the pleasures of life, but we don't need them to give us a sense of worth. By finding the space between having and being, we open ourselves to a life of freedom and peace, free from the pressure of needing more. When we begin to live from this space of detachment, we start to notice a profound change in our daily experience. We are no longer driven by the need for approval, validation, or accumulation. We simply live. We begin to find joy in the simple act of being, in the moments when we are not striving, comparing, or chasing. This is the freedom that comes from practicing detachment. We engage with the world, but we are no longer controlled by it. By embracing upekkha, we dissolve the false belief that our worth is tied to what we have. We begin to see that we are enough just as we are. The space between having and being becomes a space of peace, where material sufficiency and existential peace meet. We no longer need to prove anything, own anything, or achieve anything to feel complete. We are already whole, and that is enough. This realization frees us from the endless chase for more, allowing us to rest in the quiet knowing that we already have everything we need. Living in this space is the ultimate freedom, not the freedom from having things, but the freedom from being defined by them. Upekkha shows us that we can live in the world without being bound by it. And in this freedom, we experience the deepest peace. When we stop clinging to the idea that having more will make us happy, we start to realize that being content with what we have is the key to true happiness. This is the path that leads us to lasting peace and fulfillment, a peace that is not dependent on external circumstances, but on the realization that we are already enough. Having explored the freedom and peace that arise from detachment and contentment, we now confront one of the most powerful and unavoidable aspects of life: suffering. It is often seen as something to avoid at all costs, something that signifies that something is wrong or missing. However, in the teachings of Buddhism, suffering, or dukkha, is not just a painful reality to endure. It holds within it a profound wisdom that can lead us to a deeper understanding of life, of ourselves, and of the world around us. The more we learn to face suffering directly, without resistance, the more we realize that it is not something to fear or escape from, but a luminous doorway pointing us toward a deeper truth, that the feeling of lack or incompleteness we experience is an illusion, and that what we have been seeking has always been within us. Suffering is something we all experience in different forms and intensities. It may come in the form of loss, disappointment, or hardship, and it often leaves us feeling as if something essential is missing from our lives. We search desperately for solutions, for fixes, for ways to escape the pain, believing that once the pain is gone, we will find peace. But in reality, it is dukkha itself, suffering, that offers us a pathway to that peace. The key lies in how we approach suffering. Instead of trying to avoid or numb it, we can learn to see it as a messenger, pointing us directly to the misunderstandings and attachments that cause us to feel incomplete. Suffering, in the Buddhist sense, is not an anomaly or something to be fixed. It is a natural part of life, woven into the fabric of our human experience. The Buddha's teachings tell us that suffering arises from our attachment to things as permanent when, in fact, everything is impermanent. We attach ourselves to people, situations, possessions, and identities, believing they will bring us lasting happiness or fulfillment. But as life continuously changes, these attachments inevitably bring us pain, because what we cling to is not permanent. When we experience loss, disappointment, or fear, we feel as though something essential has been taken from us, but what we fail to see is that the illusion of permanence is what causes our suffering. The Buddha's insight into suffering shows us that there is a wisdom hidden within it. If we approach suffering with mindfulness and awareness, we begin to see that it is pointing us towards the very attachments and beliefs that create our sense of lack. We are not lacking anything. It is simply our misunderstanding of impermanence that causes us to feel incomplete. We suffer because we believe that something is missing, that we need to change something about our circumstances, our relationships, or even ourselves in order to be happy. But suffering, when understood, can reveal to us that we are already whole, and it is only through our attachments and desires that we feel incomplete. One of the deepest teachings about suffering is that it teaches us to let go of our attachments to outcomes. Life is unpredictable and uncontrollable, and no matter how hard we try to control our circumstances or the people around us, we cannot make life conform to our desires. Suffering is a natural consequence of our attempt to control the uncontrollable. When we learn to let go of this need for control, we begin to experience life as it is, without the pressure of trying to shape it into something that fits our expectations. The wisdom of suffering lies in recognizing that our suffering is often a product of wanting things to be different than they are, of desiring a version of reality that doesn't match what is happening in the present moment. When we look deeply into the root of our suffering, we begin to uncover the truth of impermanence. Our pain often comes from clinging to the idea that certain things should remain the same, that relationships, possessions, or even our own identity should not change. But change is the only constant in life. When we stop resisting change and start embracing the natural flow of life, we realize that suffering is no longer something we need to fear or avoid. It becomes a tool for awakening, a reminder that we are connected to the ever-changing nature of existence. In the face of suffering, the practice of mindfulness becomes essential. We often react to pain with aversion, trying to push it away or numb ourselves from it. But mindfulness teaches us to approach suffering with an open heart, to observe it without judgment, and to learn from it. Instead of running away from discomfort, we can sit with it, feel it, and allow it to teach us. The more we can approach suffering with awareness, the more we begin to see that it is not an obstacle to peace, but a pathway to it. By facing suffering directly, without resistance, we allow ourselves to transform it into an opportunity for growth and insight. The wisdom of suffering also teaches us about the nature of craving and attachment. Our desires, when unchecked, often lead to suffering. We crave experiences, people, possessions, or status, believing that once we attain them, we will be happy. But once we get what we want, we quickly find that the satisfaction is fleeting and the cycle begins again. Suffering reveals to us that craving is the root of our dissatisfaction, because it always leads to the next craving, the next desire. True peace comes when we let go of the need to constantly seek and instead rest in the present moment, accepting things as they are. When we understand that suffering is rooted in craving and attachment, we can begin to dissolve the illusion of lack that drives these desires. We begin to see that what we are seeking externally is already within us. We do not need more to feel whole. Our cravings arise from the belief that we are not complete, that something is missing. But the truth is that nothing is missing. Our true nature is already complete. Suffering, when fully understood, teaches us that the search for more is a cycle that never ends. We are invited to stop searching, stop craving, and begin to rest in the present moment where peace and fulfillment are already available. Finally, suffering shows us the interconnectedness of all beings. When we suffer, we often feel isolated, as though our pain is unique or separate from the world around us. But the more we look into our suffering, the more we realize that it is part of the shared human experience. Our pain is not separate from others, it connects us to them. In this way, suffering can be a doorway to greater compassion, not only for others, but for ourselves as well. We begin to see that our own suffering is a mirror of the suffering of others, and that by embracing our own pain, we open our hearts to the pain of the world. This realization deepens our connection to all beings and opens the path to true compassion. Through suffering, we are invited to awaken to the deeper truth that wholeness is always present. We are not incomplete, nor is there anything missing in our lives. Our suffering is an invitation to recognize the illusion of separation, the desire for control, and the attachment to things that do not provide lasting peace. By understanding the wisdom hidden in suffering, we can begin to let go of these attachments and see the world through the eyes of compassion, acceptance, and peace. Having explored the wisdom hidden in suffering and the realization that our true nature is already whole, we now turn our attention to something incredibly simple, yet profoundly transformative: the breath. Often taken for granted, the act of breathing is not just a basic function of life. It is a gateway to understanding the vastness and completeness of the present moment. In the midst of the noise and distractions of life, the breath offers us a powerful tool for grounding ourselves in the here and now. Through mindful breathing, we can reconnect with the boundless presence that lies beneath the surface of our everyday experience. The breath, in its simplicity, carries within it the essence of the universe's completeness. It is a microcosm of the infinite, revealing that everything we seek is already within us, waiting to be discovered. Mindful breathing is often seen as a practice for calming the mind, but its potential extends far beyond just relaxation. By paying attention to the breath, we begin to notice how it reflects the rhythms of life itself, constantly flowing, never stagnant, always in motion, yet perfectly balanced. Just as the breath moves in and out, so too does life move with its own natural ebb and flow. When we practice mindfulness in the breath, we become attuned to this rhythm, allowing it to guide us toward a deeper sense of presence. We realize that, much like the breath, our true nature is ever present, always available to us, waiting to be acknowledged. At its core, the breath is an embodiment of impermanence. Each inhalation is followed by an exhalation, each moment giving way to the next. By focusing on the breath, we experience the truth of change, the natural cycle of in and out, of coming and going. In this simple act of breathing, we are reminded that everything in life is temporary. We cannot hold on to any moment, just as we cannot hold on to the breath itself. But in letting go, in allowing each breath to flow freely, we experience a sense of freedom and peace. We realize that there is no need to control the breath, just as there is no need to control the flow of life. We can simply be with it, allowing it to guide us toward a deeper understanding of our true nature. The breath also teaches us about the interconnectedness of all things. Just as our breath connects us to the world around us, so too does it connect us to every living being. Every breath we take is shared by the air, by nature, by all other beings who are also breathing in this moment. In this way, the breath becomes a symbol of the unity that underlies the diversity of life. It is a reminder that though we may appear separate, we are all part of the same vast, interconnected web of existence. By focusing on the breath, we are invited to recognize this unity and to feel a deep sense of belonging, not only to ourselves, but to the world and to all beings. Through mindful breathing, we begin to experience the present moment in its fullness. We stop worrying about the future or regretting the past, and instead, we come back to the simplicity of being. The breath is always with us, always in the present, offering us a direct experience of the now. When we breathe mindfully, we are not trying to escape from our thoughts or feelings. We are simply bringing our attention to the present moment, to the here and now, where peace and completeness reside. In this state of awareness, we realize that everything we need is already within us, and that we are enough as we are. This connection to the present moment through the breath also brings us closer to stillness. The more we focus on our breath, the more we begin to experience the quiet space that exists between each inhale and exhale. This space is a reminder that beneath the constant flow of thoughts and emotions, there is a deeper level of stillness, a quiet presence that is always available to us. The breath, in its simple rhythm, becomes a bridge to this stillness, guiding us toward a sense of peace that is not dependent on external circumstances. By returning to the breath, we can access this inner stillness at any time, and in doing so, we reconnect with the completeness that we have always sought. The infinite nature of the breath lies in its capacity to connect us to something greater than ourselves. Each breath is both an individual act and a part of the collective, a link in the endless chain of life. The breath reminds us that life itself is infinite, that we are part of something much larger than our personal concerns, much greater than our individual stories. Just as we are born and eventually die, the breath flows continuously, symbolizing the continuity of life. In this way, each breath becomes a doorway to the infinite, a microcosm of the vast, ever-changing universe. When we breathe mindfully, we are reminded that we are not separate from this flow, but part of it. The breath is a reminder that we are part of the whole. In focusing on the breath, we also begin to cultivate a deeper sense of acceptance. The breath doesn't judge, it simply is. It doesn't strive to be anything other than what it is in that moment. Similarly, when we bring mindfulness to our breath, we begin to accept ourselves as we are, without judgment or expectation. We let go of the need to be different, to change, or to improve. The breath teaches us that we don't need to be anything other than what we already are. In this acceptance, we find the peace that comes from letting go of striving and simply being present. As we practice mindful breathing, we also begin to recognize the profound wisdom that is available in each moment. The breath, in its simplicity, carries within it the essence of life itself, impermanent, interconnected, and full of potential. It shows us that everything is in constant motion, that nothing is fixed or permanent. The breath, as it flows in and out, reminds us that change is not something to fear, but something that is essential to our growth. Just as the breath moves in cycles, so too does life, and in embracing this cyclical nature, we find a deeper understanding of our place in the world. The breath teaches us that life is not something to be controlled, but something to be experienced with openness and acceptance. Through mindful breathing, we are invited to experience the infinite nature of the present. The breath becomes a powerful tool for grounding us in the now, helping us to release the burdens of the past and the anxieties about the future. When we are fully present with our breath, we realize that there is nothing more we need to do or achieve. Everything is available to us in this moment. The breath, in its simplicity, brings us back to the essence of our being, to the completeness that has always been there, waiting to be recognized. In the end, the breath is not just a physical act. It is a profound teacher, guiding us toward a deeper connection with ourselves and the world around us. It reminds us that we are part of the infinite flow of life, and that true peace comes not from seeking outside of ourselves, but from returning to the present moment, to the simple act of being. In each breath, we discover the universe in its entirety, and in that discovery, we find the boundless presence that is our true home. As we move from the simplicity of the breath, a natural tool for grounding ourselves in the present moment, we begin to see that the search for meaning is something far deeper than the pursuit of external goals or achievements. Much like the flow of breath, meaning itself is not something that we need to chase after. The Zen tradition teaches us that meaning is not something we find through constant searching, but something that reveals itself when we let go of the need to control, to chase, or to define it. In the act of surrendering the search, we make space for meaning to emerge naturally, the Zen way of embracing just this. We are often taught to seek meaning in all that we do, to find purpose in our careers, in our relationships, in the goals we set, and in the things we accumulate. But in doing so, we often miss the profound truth that meaning is not something to be obtained, but something that is already present in everything around us. The more we try to define it, the more elusive it becomes. The constant desire to find meaning in our actions, in our experiences, or in our relationships creates a tension, a gap between what we desire and what is actually there. And the more we chase this gap, the further it slips from our grasp. It is only when we let go of the pursuit, when we stop grasping at meaning, that we discover that it is always available to us, already present in the simplicity of each moment. The act of letting go of the chase for meaning is not a passive resignation, but a profound shift in how we relate to the world. We stop seeing life as something to be figured out, something to be solved, and we begin to see it as something to be experienced. In this shift, meaning begins to reveal itself in the ordinary moments of life. The search for meaning often leads us to overlook the richness of the present moment. We are too busy trying to understand or define things, to label them, to categorize them. But when we stop doing this, we begin to realize that the meaning we are seeking is already there in every experience, in every interaction, and in every simple, unadorned moment. Zen, in its simplest form, invites us to let go of the need to constantly seek meaning, and instead to embrace the present just as it is. The idea of just this suggests that meaning does not need to be attached to anything other than the experience itself. When we allow ourselves to be fully present, to experience life without the need for labels or expectations, we discover that meaning arises naturally. It is not something outside of us that we must chase, but something that emerges when we are fully awake and aware of the present moment. This perspective asks us to release the attachment to outcome, to stop identifying with the idea that we must find meaning in everything we do. The more we chase meaning, the more we reinforce the belief that it is something elusive and distant. But when we stop chasing, when we let go of this belief and surrender to the experience of just this, we begin to experience life in its fullness. The moments we once saw as trivial or insignificant begin to shine with purpose, because meaning is not in the destination, but in the journey itself. The Zen way of just this is not about denying our desires or goals, but about realizing that meaning does not reside in the fulfillment of these desires, but in the very act of living itself. The more we chase after meaning, the more we create a sense of lack, as if something is always missing. But when we let go of this pursuit, we realize that everything we need is already here, waiting to be discovered in the present. The meaning of our lives is not something we need to search for or fabricate. It is something that emerges naturally when we stop trying to control it. This doesn't mean that we stop seeking or growing, but that we shift our focus from trying to find meaning in external sources to allowing it to reveal itself in our everyday experiences. By letting go of the chase, we open ourselves up to a deeper connection with the world around us. We become more attuned to the subtle beauty in everything, from the quiet rhythm of our breath to the feel of the earth beneath our feet. In the simplest moments, we find meaning not in what we achieve, but in the simple act of being. We realize that life's meaning is not something we find outside of us, but something that unfolds within us as we fully experience the present. The key to unlocking this understanding is surrender, not in a way that diminishes our engagement with life, but in a way that allows us to stop resisting it. Surrendering the search for meaning doesn't mean giving up our goals or aspirations, but it means letting go of the idea that meaning is something to be found in a particular outcome. It is about recognizing that meaning flows from the experience of living, not from our grasping after external markers of success or fulfillment. When we let go of the need to define meaning, we start to realize that life itself is the teacher. Every moment is an opportunity to experience the depth of meaning that is already here. We begin to see that every interaction, every challenge, every small act holds its own significance, not because of some grand purpose, but because it is part of the flow of life. The search for meaning falls away, and in its place we find a profound sense of peace that comes from living fully in the present, from allowing life to simply be what it is. In this process, we also let go of the need to label or judge our experiences. We stop measuring our lives against an ideal, against a vision of what we think it should be. Instead, we begin to appreciate it for what it is in its fullness. We experience the beauty of life as it unfolds, moment by moment, without the need for it to be any different. The Zen teaching of just this asks us to accept each moment without judgment, to experience it fully, without the filter of our preconceptions or expectations. This acceptance of what is, without trying to change it or define it, opens the door to a deeper understanding of the meaning of our lives. The practice of letting go of the search for meaning also invites us to embrace uncertainty. So much of our suffering comes from the desire to know, to understand, to have everything figured out. But life is full of unknowns, full of moments that don't fit into neat explanations or definitions. When we stop trying to make sense of everything, we open ourselves to the possibility of simply being with the uncertainty, with the not knowing. It is in this space of not knowing, of not needing to have everything figured out, that we experience the most profound sense of meaning. In the surrender of the chase, we find freedom. This approach to life does not lead to passivity. It does not mean that we stop caring or stop working toward our goals. It means that we stop attaching our happiness to a future outcome, to an idealized version of what we think life should be. Instead, we engage with life fully, without the pressure to find meaning in every action, and instead, we allow meaning to emerge in the simplest, most unexpected places. We start to see that life itself, as it is full of meaning. We just need to be present enough to notice it. In the end, the Zen practice of just this teaches us to let go of the constant search for meaning and to embrace life as it is. The pursuit of meaning can often feel like a never-ending chase, but in the surrender of that chase, we find that life's meaning is revealed to us in the most ordinary moments, in the simple act of being present. When we stop searching for meaning, we realize that it was always here, woven into the very fabric of our existence. Meaning is not something to be found, but something to be experienced, and in this experience, we find peace. As we've come to understand, the search for meaning is often a chase that only leads us further away from the truth. The more we strive for something outside ourselves, the more elusive the peace we seek becomes. But what if the journey itself, the very act of walking, holds within it everything we need to discover? The inner pilgrimage invites us to explore the truth that we don't need to go anywhere to find what we are searching for. The destination has always been here, in the present moment, within ourselves. In Buddhism, pilgrimage is traditionally seen as a journey to sacred places, a physical act of traveling in search of enlightenment or spiritual understanding. But the deeper truth is that the most profound pilgrimage is the one we take within, where each step is an affirmation of the understanding that we are not seeking something outside of us, but rather awakening to the fullness of who we already are. The idea of an inner pilgrimage helps us realize that we are constantly on a journey, not through external landscapes, but through the terrain of our minds and hearts. Every step we take on this path is a step toward the recognition that the destination, the peace, fulfillment, and understanding we seek, is already within reach. The idea that we are already whole and complete, that we do not need to search elsewhere for our fulfillment, can be both liberating and challenging. We are often conditioned to believe that life is a race, a journey towards some distant goal or achievement. We believe that happiness or peace is something to be earned, something we can only access once we've arrived at a particular place, condition, or state. But the concept of the inner pilgrimage calls us to stop searching for fulfillment outside of ourselves. It teaches us that the process of awakening is not about achieving a future state, but about recognizing the sacredness of every moment. The beauty of this inner pilgrimage is that it is available to us at all times. There is no need to wait for a special moment or a specific event to begin the journey. The steps we take toward peace, clarity, and understanding are already unfolding right now. Every breath we take is a step on this path. Every moment of awareness is a step forward. We don't have to go anywhere or do anything extraordinary to begin our pilgrimage. The journey begins with the realization that the destination is already here, in the present moment. The path is not some far-off place. It is here, beneath our feet, in the daily experiences of life. Each step on this inner pilgrimage, much like a traditional pilgrimage, is not just about reaching a destination. It is about awakening to the wisdom within ourselves as we move through life. The process of walking is as significant as the destination we believe we are moving toward. As we walk, we come to understand that the path itself is sacred, that each step is an opportunity to engage with the present moment, to recognize the interconnectedness of all things, and to experience the deep peace that arises from simply being present. This inner journey also invites us to release the need for certainty and control. We often walk through life with the belief that we must know exactly where we are going and how to get there. This desire for certainty can keep us trapped in the idea that we are incomplete, that we must achieve something more before we can feel at peace. But the inner pilgrimage teaches us that the journey is the goal. We don't need to have all the answers. We simply need to walk with an open heart and mind, trusting that the steps we take are leading us exactly where we need to be. Each moment on the path is a chance to embrace uncertainty and let go of the need for control, allowing us to experience the fullness of life as it is. In the tradition of Buddhist pilgrimage, the goal is not necessarily to reach a specific place, but to transform our way of seeing the world. Pilgrims walk with the understanding that the physical journey mirrors a deeper spiritual journey within. Similarly, our inner pilgrimage is not about reaching a destination, but about becoming more present with each step, with each breath, and with each moment. The destination is already here, in the recognition that we are already whole, that we do not need to seek anything outside of ourselves to find peace or meaning. This realization frees us from the pressure to constantly strive for more, to chase after the next goal, or to achieve some future state of being. The path of the inner pilgrimage invites us to release the notion of arrival, the belief that we need to reach a particular place to be fulfilled. When we stop measuring our lives by external achievements or milestones, we begin to realize that peace and contentment are not destinations, but the natural result of living with awareness and presence in the moment. The more we walk this path, the more we recognize that everything we need is already here. As we engage in this inner pilgrimage, we start to see that the world around us is as sacred as the places we visit on a traditional pilgrimage. Every moment becomes an opportunity for insight, growth, and awakening. The mundane, everyday tasks of life, walking, eating, breathing, even sitting quietly, become part of the sacred journey. Each step, each action, is an opportunity to engage fully with the present moment and to embrace the impermanence of life. The more we engage with the world in this way, the more we begin to understand that there is no separation between the sacred and the ordinary. The inner pilgrimage invites us to see the sacredness in everything, to approach every moment with reverence, and to understand that the journey itself is what brings us closer to the truth of who we are. The wisdom of the inner pilgrimage also teaches us to be patient with ourselves. Much like a traditional pilgrimage, the inner journey is not always linear or straightforward. There will be moments of challenge, doubt, and struggle, but these are not signs of failure. They are part of the process of awakening, opportunities to confront the misunderstandings and attachments that keep us feeling disconnected from our true nature. The path is full of ups and downs, twists and turns, but each step is a part of the journey, and each moment holds the potential for learning and growth. This patience allows us to release the need for instant gratification. We live in a world that often encourages us to seek immediate results, but the path of the inner pilgrimage teaches us that true wisdom and understanding take time. Just as a physical pilgrimage is not completed in a single step, our spiritual journey unfolds gradually. Each step we take, whether forward or backward, is part of a larger, more meaningful process. This understanding allows us to be kinder and more compassionate with ourselves, to trust in the unfolding of our path, and to recognize that the journey itself is the reward. The inner pilgrimage also invites us to engage with the world from a place of humility. The more we walk this path, the more we realize how much we do not know. We come to understand that we are not separate from the world, but deeply interconnected with all beings. This recognition of our interconnectedness fosters a sense of compassion for ourselves and others, as we begin to see that we are all on our own inner pilgrimages, each with our own struggles, insights, and moments of clarity. Ultimately, the inner pilgrimage shows us that the destination has always been here. We do not need to search for it outside of ourselves. We do not need to go anywhere to find peace or understanding. The more we walk, the more we realize that the path is the destination. It is in each step that we uncover the truth of our own completeness. The inner pilgrimage is not about achieving something, but about embracing the present moment with full awareness. When we do this, we come to understand that the journey itself is the fulfillment, and the destination has always been within us. As we continue our journey inward, we have already uncovered that the search for meaning and fulfillment often traps us in a cycle of craving, constantly chasing after something we believe will bring us completion. But what if the very act of waiting for something to happen, for the future to bring us the satisfaction or peace we seek, is where the illusion lies? The truth is that we often live as though our happiness and sense of peace are somewhere ahead of us, in some future moment. But the deeper wisdom of Buddhism teaches us that the freedom we seek is not something to be found in the future, but in the acceptance of the present moment. This brings us to the insight of impermanence, or anicca, which teaches us that the passage of time is not something to fear or resist, but something to embrace. We are often consumed by the past, replaying old stories, reliving mistakes, or clinging to memories. At the same time, we anxiously anticipate the future, hoping for something better, something that will bring us peace or happiness. We live in a state of constant waiting, always feeling like we'll be happier when we achieve something, when we arrive at a certain point in our lives, or when things finally settle. But the teaching of impermanence reveals that there is no arrival, no fixed point where we can finally claim completion. The future is always a moment away, and the past is already gone. We are left with the present, the only moment where life is truly happening. Understanding impermanence allows us to see the truth of the present. The more we cling to the idea of what could be or what has been, the more we miss the reality of what is right in front of us. The past and future are both constructs of the mind, projections that distract us from the only time that truly exists, this moment. When we fully realize the transient nature of everything, thoughts, emotions, experiences, and even our own bodies, we begin to understand that waiting for something in the future to complete us only keeps us stuck in the illusion of lack. Anicca, or impermanence, teaches us that everything is in a constant state of flux. No experience, no feeling, no material possession, no relationship is permanent. They come and go, and when we let go of our attachment to permanence, we experience the freedom of the present. The more we grasp onto the future or the past, the more we bind ourselves to the idea that we need something outside of this moment to be complete. But as we practice embracing impermanence, we begin to see that the present moment holds the key to everything we seek. Time disappears when we stop projecting ourselves into the future and start living in the now. The freedom beyond past and future is not found in escaping the present, but in fully engaging with it. The more we stop waiting for the future to bring us something we think we need, the more we realize that we are already whole. There is nothing to wait for because everything we need is available to us right now. The illusion of time disappears when we stop believing that we need time to achieve something or become something. Time, in its truest sense, is just another layer of the mind. When we drop the idea of a linear timeline and step into the present moment, we experience the timelessness of existence. When we free ourselves from the belief that our peace or happiness lies in the future, we stop waiting for completion. This waiting keeps us from truly experiencing the present. We often think that once we have the job, the relationship, the recognition, or the achievement, then we will be happy. But by living this way, we are constantly postponing happiness. We wait for the future to bring us something, not realizing that the future is simply an extension of the present. The only time we can be truly alive is now. The more we accept impermanence, the more we realize that there is no need to wait. Peace, joy, and completeness are available in the present moment. And when we learn to embrace this, we free ourselves from the cycle of longing and disappointment. Living in the present, without constantly looking to the future or clinging to the past, is not about giving up on our goals or aspirations. It is about realizing that our true fulfillment does not lie in the attainment of these goals. Instead, we can pursue our goals with a sense of peace and freedom, knowing that we do not need to achieve them to feel complete. When we let go of the need for a particular outcome, we allow life to unfold as it is meant to. We stop forcing the future and instead flow with the present, accepting the natural unfolding of life with gratitude and trust. This understanding of impermanence gives us a deeper sense of freedom because we are no longer chained to the idea that we need time to fix ourselves or our lives. We stop looking for the right moment, the right circumstance, or the right achievement to make us feel whole. The moment of peace is always available. We realize that time is not a linear path, but an unfolding process that we experience as part of a larger, interconnected whole. This realization helps us see that our happiness and peace are not conditional on time or the future. They are available right now in the present moment, where time has no hold over us. To live without the attachment to past and future is to experience the world in its fullest, most alive state. We begin to see that everything is in constant motion, and in that motion we can find peace. Time may continue to move forward, but the essence of life itself is timeless. The more we understand this, the more we begin to experience the freedom that comes from letting go of the need to control time, to wait for things to happen, or to cling to the past. Anika teaches us that life is a flow, not a destination. Everything we experience, good or bad, pleasant or painful, is in constant flux, and so are we. We are not the same as we were yesterday, nor will we be the same tomorrow. This recognition allows us to live without resistance, without the pressure to control or define our experience. We embrace the changing nature of life, seeing that the flow itself is perfect just as it is. There is no need for anything to be fixed or permanent. The beauty of life is found in its impermanence, in the moment-to-moment unfolding. By letting go of the idea that the future holds our salvation, or that the past has defined us, we realize that this moment is enough. There is no need to wait for something else to complete us. We are already complete. Time, with all its illusions of the past and future, fades away when we realize that we have always been in the present. We were never waiting for something to happen. The peace we seek has always been within our reach, and it is only by embracing impermanence that we can experience it fully. When we release the burden of time and its grasp on our lives, we discover that life, in its simplest form, is already perfect. We no longer need to wait for the right time, the right achievement, or the right circumstance. The present moment is the ultimate source of peace, and in this moment, we find that time no longer controls us. It simply flows, and in that flow, we live fully, completely, and without the need for completion. As we've seen, the concept of time and our attachment to it often keeps us in a cycle of striving, always believing that peace, fulfillment, or happiness lies somewhere ahead of us. We chase these ideals, pushing ourselves further into the future, when the reality is that peace is available right now, in this moment. But what happens when we let go of the need to constantly pursue something? What if the very act of doing less could lead us to experience the profound realization that nothing is missing, that we are already whole and complete? This brings us to a powerful concept in Buddhist practice: Wu Wei, or effortless action. In a world that celebrates constant activity, achievement, and striving, Wu Wei offers a radical shift in perspective. It's not about doing less out of laziness or avoiding responsibility, but about doing less in the sense of aligning with the natural flow of life. The wisdom of Wu Wei teaches us that much of the struggle we face is unnecessary. We often exhaust ourselves by forcing, striving, and pushing against the natural course of events. But what if we could allow things to unfold without trying so hard? What if we could embrace the understanding that everything happens as it should, and that trying to force outcomes only causes more resistance and suffering? The key to Wu Wei is not about inaction, but about effortless action, moving with the natural rhythms of life instead of constantly trying to control them. When we practice this concept, we begin to see that less effort often leads to greater results. It's about finding the balance between action and surrender, where we engage with the world fully, but without the tight grip of attachment or control. By releasing the need to force or manipulate situations, we allow things to unfold naturally, and in this unfolding, we find that nothing essential has ever been lacking. This way of living asks us to rethink our relationship with effort. In a society that measures success by how much we produce or how hard we work, it can be difficult to embrace the idea that less is more. We are taught to strive constantly, to push ourselves to do more, achieve more, and be more. However, Wu Wei invites us to step back and recognize the wisdom of non-striving. It's a reminder that we don't need to force things to happen in order to be successful or fulfilled. By relaxing into the flow of life, we find that what we need is already within us and around us. The practice of Wu Wei in Buddhist teachings helps us understand that the struggle to attain something is often rooted in the belief that we are incomplete. We chase after goals, possessions, relationships, and experiences, thinking that these will fill the void we feel inside. But in the act of striving, we ignore the truth that the completeness we seek is already here. When we stop trying to achieve something more, we realize that our innate wholeness has always been present. The act of striving often keeps us separate from our own fulfillment, because it reinforces the idea that we need to become something else. But when we practice effortless action, we dissolve that separation and see that everything we need is already within our reach. Another aspect of Wu Wei is its connection to acceptance. We often spend much of our time wishing things were different, trying to change circumstances, people, or ourselves to fit some ideal. This creates a constant sense of dissatisfaction. But Wu Wei teaches us to accept things as they are, to act in harmony with what is happening in the moment, instead of trying to force it to be something else. Acceptance does not mean passivity. It means engaging with life in a way that flows naturally, responding to the moment with grace and wisdom. When we accept things as they are, we find that the tension and resistance that often accompany our striving begin to dissolve. The principle of effortless action invites us to act with clarity and purpose, without the cloud of anxiety or the pressure of expectation. Often, we struggle because we overthink or worry about the outcome of our actions. This kind of overthinking creates mental blocks that prevent us from acting in the most effective way. But when we approach life with simplicity and mindfulness, we make space for clarity to emerge naturally. The more we let go of the need to control every detail, the more we begin to trust the flow of life and the decisions we make. When we act with presence, without the burden of expectation, we find that our actions are more aligned with the natural order of things. In the practice of Wu Wei, we also come to understand the role of patience. In our modern world, we are often taught to expect immediate results. We are conditioned to believe that success and fulfillment are something we need to achieve quickly or through intense effort. But effortless action teaches us that good things come in their own time. Patience is not about waiting passively, but about trusting the process, knowing that life unfolds at its own pace. The practice of patience helps us to remain steady, grounded, and clear-headed, rather than rushing into actions or decisions driven by impatience or anxiety. This approach to life also brings us closer to a sense of freedom. We often think that we must force things to happen, that we must push ourselves to succeed. But Wu Wei reveals the profound freedom that comes from letting go of attachment to specific outcomes. When we stop struggling against life, we stop feeling trapped by our own desires and expectations. We begin to experience life with more ease and fluidity, recognizing that everything is constantly changing and that we do not need to cling to anything in order to feel secure. This freedom from attachment creates space for true joy, the kind that doesn't depend on any external circumstance, but arises naturally from the simple act of being present. The more we practice Wu Wei, the more we begin to recognize the difference between productive effort and unnecessary striving. Not all action requires intense effort or force. Sometimes, the most effective way to engage with life is through a quiet, intentional presence, a presence that acts in harmony with the world around it. This kind of action is not rushed, but it is full of meaning. It allows us to act with wisdom and clarity, knowing when to engage and when to let things unfold on their own. One of the most profound teachings of Wu Wei is that doing less often leads to achieving more. In our pursuit of success, we often overextend ourselves, believing that if we do more, we will be more successful. But this creates burnout, frustration, and a sense of inadequacy. Wu Wei teaches us that by doing less, we actually create more space for clarity, creativity, and effectiveness. When we stop pushing and forcing, we allow our energy to be used in a way that is more aligned with our true nature. This alignment leads to more authentic and sustainable success because it is based on balance, mindfulness, and presence. The wisdom of Wu Wei ultimately reveals that nothing essential has ever been missing. The chase for more, for achievement, for validation, often stems from the belief that we are incomplete. We believe that by acquiring more or doing more, we will find fulfillment. But effortless action shows us that fulfillment is not something to be acquired or achieved. It is something that arises when we let go of the illusion that something is lacking. When we trust in the natural flow of life and act with simplicity and presence, we discover that we are already complete. The pursuit of more only keeps us trapped in the illusion of lack. The quiet revolution of non-striving reminds us that when we do less, we uncover the truth that everything we seek is already within us. By practicing Wu Wei, we stop fighting against the current of life and begin to flow with it. We let go of the need to control every outcome and trust that life will unfold in its own time. In doing so, we experience a deeper sense of peace, clarity, and fulfillment, knowing that nothing is missing. The practice of effortless action brings us back to the truth that we are whole and complete, exactly as we are. After exploring how effortless action reveals a deeper truth about our inherent completeness, we now shift our focus to something equally profound, yet often overlooked in our daily lives: the chaos and confusion we experience. We often see these moments of struggle, failure, or grief as obstacles or signs that we are off course. But what if these very experiences hold the key to our awakening? The teachings of the Lotus Sutra offer us a different perspective, that even in the midst of life's messiness, we are already whole, and our challenges are not signs of our inadequacy, but opportunities to reveal our true nature. In this, we begin to understand that the path to enlightenment isn't found by escaping from suffering or chaos, but by embracing them as integral parts of our journey. The metaphor of the jewel in the mud perfectly encapsulates this idea. Just as a lotus flower grows from the mud, rising to the surface in all its beauty, our highest potential emerges through the very difficulties and messiness of life. Failure, grief, and confusion are not setbacks. They are the fertile ground in which our Buddha nature is planted and nurtured. The Lotus Sutra teaches us that we do not need to escape suffering, nor do we need to perfect ourselves before we can experience enlightenment. Instead, we are invited to see that even in our struggles, we are already perfect and complete, much like the lotus that blooms beautifully, even from the mud. Often, we go through life thinking that we need to get rid of all our problems, that we must somehow rise above the chaos in order to find peace or fulfillment. This belief keeps us in a perpetual state of seeking. always waiting for the right circumstances or conditions to arise before we can truly feel at peace. But the teachings of the Lotus Sutra remind us that enlightenment is not something that comes later after we have cleared away all our struggles. It is something that exists in the midst of our daily lives, right now. We don't need to escape life's difficulties to experience peace and completeness. In fact, it is through these very challenges that we come to understand our true nature, which is always perfect, even when it is hidden beneath the layers of confusion or pain. Understanding this allows us to shift our relationship with suffering. Instead of seeing it as something to be avoided or eliminated, we begin to see it as a teaching, a guide that helps us awaken to the deeper truths of existence. The Lotus Sutra teaches that Buddha nature is not something we have to earn or attain. It is something that is already present in all of us, even in our most difficult moments. When we embrace the messiness of life, we begin to see that there is no division between the sacred and the ordinary, between the perfect and the imperfect. Everything is part of the same flow of life. All of it is imbued with the potential for awakening. One of the most liberating insights that comes from this understanding is the realization that we do not need to be perfect to be complete. Our imperfections, our struggles, our failures, and our grief are all part of the same process of growth and awakening. They are not something to overcome or eliminate, but something to accept and learn from. When we stop trying to escape the messiness of life and instead embrace it, we begin to experience the peace that is always available to us. In the mud of our struggles, we find the seed of Buddha nature ready to bloom into full realization. This shift in perspective also allows us to break free from the illusion of control. So often, we try to control the circumstances of our lives, thinking that only if we could arrange things just so, we would find peace. But the truth is that life is unpredictable and often chaotic. The more we try to control everything around us, the more we experience resistance and suffering. But when we let go of this need for control and embrace the natural flow of life, we open ourselves to the possibility of experiencing peace in even the most chaotic circumstances. The teachings of the Lotus Sutra remind us that we do not need to escape chaos to find enlightenment. Instead, we are invited to find peace within it by seeing the inherent Buddha nature in all things. When we begin to see life's challenges as opportunities for growth, we also start to recognize that there is no such thing as failure in the true sense. Failure is simply a lesson, a moment of learning, a step in the process of awakening. When we embrace this understanding, we stop seeing ourselves as broken or incomplete, and we start to see that every experience, no matter how difficult, is part of the unfolding of our true nature. This realization frees us from the need to constantly strive for an idealized version of ourselves or our lives. Instead, we can fully accept ourselves as we are, knowing that the messiness of life is just a part of the process of becoming. The Lotus Sutra teaches us that Buddha nature is present in all beings, regardless of their apparent state. This includes ourselves, with all of our imperfections, struggles, and limitations. The key to awakening is not about transcending our flaws, but about recognizing the divine essence that is already within us. Suffering is not something that takes away from our inherent perfection. It is part of the path that helps us awaken to it. When we recognize this, we stop running from our pain or trying to hide it. We begin to embrace it as part of the whole of who we are, not as a hindrance to our enlightenment, but as the very ground from which our wisdom can grow. This understanding of suffering as a teacher helps us to move beyond the idea that enlightenment is a distant goal or something that can only be achieved after we perfect ourselves. Instead, we begin to realize that enlightenment is not something to be achieved, but something to be recognized. It is already within us, and it is through our engagement with life, with all its challenges and uncertainties, that we come to see it more clearly. Each moment, each experience, no matter how difficult, is an opportunity to touch that perfection and to understand that we are never truly apart from it. In this way, the Lotus Sutra invites us to reframe our relationship with suffering. Instead of seeing it as a burden or a punishment, we begin to see it as a call to awaken, a path that leads us to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. When we accept this, we stop running from life's challenges and instead engage with them fully. We begin to see that the mud of life is where the lotus blooms, where our Buddha nature is revealed, not in spite of our struggles, but through them. The most profound realization that comes from this understanding is that we are already whole. We are not defined by our struggles, our failures, or our pain. These are simply experiences that help us realize the truth of who we are. Our journey is not one of fixing or improving ourselves, but of uncovering the perfection that is already present. When we stop seeking to escape the messiness of life and instead embrace it as part of the process, we find that the perfection we seek has always been here in the very life we are living. As we've learned to embrace the perfection in imperfection, recognizing that even our struggles are opportunities for awakening, we now turn to a fundamental aspect of our human experience: relationships. We often approach relationships with a sense of ownership, trying to control the outcome, believing that the way others behave or how they relate to us will determine our happiness. But what if true fulfillment in relationships does not come from control, but from letting go of attachment? What if the sacredness of connection lies in loving without possessing, in accepting others exactly as they are, without trying to shape them into something that fulfills our expectations? This shift in perspective reveals a deeper truth about wholeness in relationships. That connection itself, without the burden of control, is what brings true peace. Attachment to outcomes is one of the most pervasive challenges we face in relationships. We often find ourselves waiting for others to act or respond in a way that will validate our worth, or believing that if we could only influence the way someone behaves, our connection would be complete. But attachment creates an illusion. It convinces us that we need someone to be a certain way in order to feel fulfilled. In doing so, we lose sight of the sacredness of the connection itself. When we love with an agenda, when we love for the purpose of gaining something or fulfilling a personal need, we create a barrier to true intimacy. The more we try to control how others behave, the more we distort the purity of connection. True love, as understood through the wisdom of Buddhism, does not seek to possess. It is not about trying to mold another person to fit our desires, needs, or expectations. Instead, It is about allowing others to be themselves, seeing them as they are without trying to change them. This kind of love is rooted in freedom, the freedom to let go of the idea that we can control someone else's feelings or actions, and instead being present with them in their wholeness. When we love without attachment, we open ourselves to a deeper experience of connection because we are no longer bound by the need for others to be a certain way to feel satisfied. In relationships where control is absent, there is a natural flow of mutual respect and understanding. We begin to see that the true fulfillment in a relationship is not found in what we receive or in the way others meet our expectations, but in the sacredness of being present with one another. The connection itself becomes the source of fulfillment, and when we stop attaching to how the relationship should be, we experience a deeper bond that transcends control, ownership, or desire. This shift from attachment to freedom also allows us to approach others with a sense of compassion. When we love without attachment, we are more able to see others for who they truly are, without judgment. We recognize that their actions or choices are not a reflection of our worth, but rather part of their own journey. We stop taking things personally, and instead, we approach the relationship with openness and acceptance. We understand that just as we are on our own path of growth, so are they. This allows us to engage with others in a way that fosters true connection, rather than seeking to fulfill personal needs or desires. The idea of loving without ownership also extends to how we view our relationships with family, friends, and even romantic partners. We often enter into relationships with an unconscious expectation that the other person will fulfill certain roles or meet specific needs. But these expectations can create pressure and stress because they place an unrealistic burden on the relationship. We end up clinging to people, wanting them to stay in our lives in the exact way we envision, when in reality, the true beauty of a relationship lies in its fluidity, in its ability to grow and change naturally over time. Loving without ownership means accepting that people change, that relationships evolve, and that we do not have the power to dictate the course of someone else's life. Instead of holding on tightly to the idea of what a relationship should be, we let go and allow it to unfold naturally. When we practice non-attachment in relationships, we stop seeing love as something to be earned or possessed. We stop thinking of relationships as transactions, where we expect something in return for our love or affection. Instead, we begin to see love as an offering, something that flows freely and naturally without expectation. This kind of love is not based on what we get out of it, but on the pure joy of sharing connection and understanding with another person. Non-attachment frees us from the need to control or manipulate, allowing us to love in a way that is authentic and real. This freedom in love also gives us the ability to let go when necessary. In relationships, we sometimes face situations where holding on becomes more harmful than helpful. Whether it's a friendship that has run its course, a romantic relationship that no longer serves us, or family dynamics that create pain, non-attachment allows us to release what no longer fits our path. Letting go doesn't mean abandoning love or care. Rather, it's about allowing people to live their lives as they see fit, without the burden of our expectations. It's about giving them the space to grow and evolve, while recognizing that we too must allow ourselves to do the same. Love without ownership gives us the strength to part ways when necessary, trusting that the connection we shared is still valid, even if the relationship changes or ends. Through the lens of non-attachment, we also begin to see that love doesn't need to be reciprocal in the way we typically think of it. Often, we expect that love should be returned in equal measure, but this expectation can cause disappointment and bitterness. True love, however, does not require reciprocity. It is a gift given freely, without the need for anything in return. This shift allows us to love without the constant fear of being rejected or unappreciated, because we understand that love is not about what we get, but about what we offer. When we give love without expectation, we experience a deeper fulfillment because we are no longer attached to the outcome. We realize that love, in its truest form, is a reflection of who we are, not a transaction to be completed. The sacredness of connection is most deeply felt when we let go of the need to control or possess. We begin to see that love, in its purest form, is about freedom. The freedom to love and be loved without being bound by the desire to possess or control. When we allow others to be exactly as they are, when we stop trying to change or mold them to meet our needs, we experience a deep peace in the relationship. This freedom allows us to connect with others in a way that is authentic and unconditional, free from judgment or attachment. Finally, when we love without ownership, we experience a deeper sense of peace and contentment within ourselves. We no longer rely on others to complete us, to validate our worth, or to fulfill our desires. We begin to understand that we are whole in ourselves, and that love is not something we take from others, but something we give freely. This understanding transforms our relationships, allowing us to connect more deeply, without the burden of attachment. We learn that true fulfillment comes from within, and that the connections we form with others are simply a reflection of the love and peace we have already cultivated within ourselves. Loving without ownership is the path to authentic fulfillment in our relationships. By releasing the need to control or possess, we create space for love to flourish in its truest form. In doing so, we free ourselves from the illusion of lack and discover the boundless peace that comes from loving with an open heart, without attachment to outcomes. We realize that true connection comes not from control, but from acceptance. And in that acceptance, we find the sacredness of all our relationships. As we've journeyed through Buddhist wisdom, we've uncovered profound truths about life, love, and inner peace. We've learned that nothing is truly missing, from embracing imperfection to finding fulfillment in the present moment. True peace lies within us. The ego, our attachments, and our endless striving often keep us stuck in the illusion of lack. But by practicing mindfulness, letting go of the chase for meaning, and accepting the flow of life, we can experience the wholeness that's already there. Suffering, confusion, and even the simplest moments can guide us to the deep, untapped wisdom within. This is the key to the peace and completion